Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. My Hero Academia. Obtain Soul Fruit and the Strongest Wooden Power. Chapter 1. Yun Fang looked at the burly man with golden hair on the billboard, and couldn't help but be touched in his heart. He spoke deeply, and the expression on his face was very rich. This is not the first world he crosses. The first world he crosses is the world of pirates. But the system told him that the system failed, traversed the error, and compensated for a soul fruit to Yun Fang. Then he took it to the Hokage world, but he still crossed the wrong one, and compensated Mu Duan's ability to Yun Fang. But still not crossing the error, he does not know, can only wait for the appearance of the system. His system doesn't have to be on call like a novel, but it doesn't appear until 24 hours after the passage. For the world of My Hero Academia, Yun Fang didn't know much, so I watched a few episodes. Therefore, the characters of this world remember Olmit in his impression, and that Midoriya Izuku. Yun Fang's parents are basically useless. His father spews small fire, and his mother can discharge electricity. Compared to the heroes of one book, their ability development is simply playing home. Therefore, they also hope that a hero will be born in their own family and put all their expectations on Yun Fang's body. Merlot Yun Fang's original personality was inherited from his father, but due to the soul piercing, he lost this arson personality. I'm back, Yun Fang said politely, opened the door, and took off his shoes. Leave the dishes and walk towards the kitchen. At this time, Yun Fang's parents were sitting in the living room and saw their son return. Immediately, they all stood up, and their faces leaked a trace of joy. Yun Fang, come back. Yun Fang nodded, put the dish in the kitchen, and then walked out again. But seeing that his parents had been staring at him, Yun Fang asked with some doubt. What's wrong? His father leaned forward, put his hand on Yun Fang's shoulder, and said seriously. Yun Fang, our family has always hoped to produce a hero, so one day, if the system goes wrong, Yun Fang will stay here for a day at most. This is a good child for parents. His mother leaked a bright smile and continued. Saying that, she rushed into the kitchen with enchanting steps, which made Yun Fang, who was standing on the side, completely speechless. After eating, Yun Fang returned to his room. He looked at himself in the mirror and slowly raised his hand. His arm turned directly into a vine, but the next moment, he quickly returned his arm to normal. It seems that in this world, you can use Mu Duan without sealing. Yun Fang muttered. Yun Fang calmly said towards the mirror. After learning that both abilities compensated by the system can be used in this world, Yun Fang lay on the bed, quietly waiting for the system to appear. But the waiting time was too boring, so Yun Fang walked out of the house, ready to learn more about the world. If the system left him in this world, he would be able to integrate quickly. After standing in the park and watching the pedestrians for a while, Yun Fang sat on a bench. Not long after he sat down, a skinny man with long blonde hair and a white loose blouse carried in his hands what he had just bought from the supermarket. He also followed and sat next to Yun Fang. Yun Fang subconsciously turned his head to look over, and 6 words blurted out from his mouth. Are you, Olmit? Quote. Olmit's eyes flashed with doubt, looking at Yun Fang. Immediately he quickly defended. Young man, you recognized the wrong person. Recognize the wrong person. Yun Fang's face was speechless. In this world, he only remembered 2 people. One of them was Olmit, who, despite his skinny mode, had an impression in his head. I know, you don't have to go around the corner with me, Yun Fang said calmly. Olmit looked surprised, but he didn't expect that since there were still people who recognized him at a glance. He leaked an embarrassed smile and asked Yun Fang. Young man, I see what happened to you. Is it convenient to say it? Quote. Not long ago, when Olmit went to the supermarket, he saw Yun Fang's soul and soul. At the time, he didn't pay much attention to it, but when he went to the supermarket and came back, it took about 40 minutes. He still saw Yun Fang standing there, and he was worried that Yun Fang would not be able to think about something, so he thought of coming over and enlightening Yun Fang, so that he would not do something stupid to commit suicide. I'm fine, Yun Fang replied. This way, Olmit smiled slightly, and at this moment he had some doubts in his heart. He is the #1 hero, although he is now skinny, but he is also a real Olmit. But the teenager in front of him was so calm, and his heart did not fluctuate at all. This couldn't help but make him feel strange. Listening to your statement, you seem to know Olmut very well. Olmut asked tentatively. Nope, I don't know a certain amount of me. How did you recognize me at a glance? Olmut continued to ask. Even if the fans who admire themselves very much become skinny, they still can't recognize it. Therefore, Olmut concluded at this moment that Yun Fang knew a lot of things. It's just that I know your burly appearance, and your skinny appearance. Cloud Wind Channel. Did you tell anyone? No hobby. Ha ha ha. Olmut laughed, then stood up and continued. Boy, you are really interesting. Quote. Yun Fang raised his head slightly and looked at Olmut in front of him speechlessly. You're more interesting, a lot older, and still so nervous. Yun Fang said slowly. Ha ha ha. Olmut continued to laugh. I should go. Quote. Yun Fang did not reply, looking at his thin figure, which gradually disappeared from his sight. Ding ding. In Yun Fang's mind, this familiar voice suddenly appeared, this voice he had heard twice. Obviously, this sound is the prompt that the system is coming. Host. Cloud Wind, Current World, My Hero Academia. Finally, when the system appeared, Yun Fang's heart gradually breathed a sigh of relief. Did you wear it wrong this time? Yun Fang asked. A few seconds after the voice fell, the system replied, no, not this time, you are coming to this world. Quote. This way, good too. Yun Fang secretly accepted it in his heart. If it's okay, I'm leaving. System Dao. Yun Fang looked confused and said, where to go? Quote. I'm responsible for sending you over, as for the rest, it's none of my business. The system replied. Sure enough, the systems in the novel are all deceptive, and the system in reality is such a pit. Yun Fang just wanted to say something, but in his mind, there were two more dings. This is a hint that the system is gone. Only Yun Fang was left sitting dumbly on the bench. Oh, this pit daddy thing. Yun Fang really wanted to complain about the system, but he couldn't hear it. Alas, forget it. Yun Fang slowly stood up and continued, after all, I also got two abilities. Quote. Instead of complaining, it is better to be realistic and accept it calmly. Yun Fang also assigned these two abilities on his body. In the future, Mu Duan's ability will be his own personality. And the soul fruit is an auxiliary. My Hero Academia is a relatively safe world. Yun Fang also felt a little lucky, according to this Pit Daddy's system, if he brought himself to the Dragon Ball world. I guess I don't know how I died. Pit Daddy. Yun Fang couldn't help but complain again. With that, Yun Fang strode towards home. Just as I was about to pass a jewelry shop, suddenly, with a bang, a very large furry monster rushed out. He followed and ran in the direction of Yun Fang. Behind him, a jewelry store worker chased after him and shouted at the monster. Robbery! Robbery! Seeing this, the surrounding pedestrians began to flee screaming, only Yun Fang remained in place. This monster is about 7 to 8 times larger than Yun Fang, and with his white fluff, it looks even bigger. Yun Fang looked at him and subconsciously muttered, dog spirit. Quote. Indeed, he looks a bit like a dog, but he's bigger. Yun Fang moved to the side, leaving a distance that he could pass. For this kind of thing, he would not stupidly insert a hand into it. The monster first looked back to see if the clerk had caught up, and whether there were any heroes around. Seeing that there were neither, he immediately stopped after passing by Yun Fang. Turning back to Yun Fang, he said, what dog spirit, I'm a wolf. Wolf, wolf, understand. Quote. He was afraid that Yun Fang would not hear it, so he said wolf several times in a row. His personality is wolf animality, huge size, very powerful hearing, as for attack, not powerful. What makes him proud is that he is very fast and lasts for a long time. He had also robbed before, but he was chased by several heroes, and finally dumped them perfectly. Animal hearing is powerful, Yun Fang couldn't help but praise. Seeing Yun Fang's unfluctuating heart, this wolf monster was unwilling. He is a robber, and even many heroes can't help him. Ordinary people will run away in a panic when they see themselves, which makes this wolf monster feel very enjoyable. But why? The heart of the young man in front of him did not fluctuate. Do you kid look down on me? The wolf monster roared at Yun Fang. Tread. At this moment, the nearby hero rushed over, and the wolf monster saw that it was not good, and wanted to grab Yun Fang. But Yun Fang's figure flashed, and he easily dodged this blow from him. The wolf monster's eyes flashed with shock, but he couldn't stay for a moment. He can only escape. But just as he was about to take a step, a vine quickly tied his foot. With a snap, he fell directly to the ground, and his head rubbed heavily against the ground. When did my feet get tied by vines? The wolf monster looked at the vine and said suspiciously. The next moment, he turned his gaze to Yun Fang, and said with a bit of panic in his tone, "Is this guy of yours a ghost?" Quote. Originally, Yun Fang did not intend to intervene in his affairs, but there was no way for him to ask for it. But this is also good, just to try your strength. You kid is looking for death, right? The wolf monster roared again, and then his limbs exerted strength, snapped the vine away. The next moment, he leaked out his sharp claws and swung towards Yun Fang. The cloud wind jumped back instantly, and then slapped the ground, and suddenly, the ground cracked, thumped a few times, and dozens of vines directly gushed out. At one time, the wolf monster was entangled. The wolf monster kept struggling. His face was very ugly. One moment he looked at the cloud wind, and the other time he looked at the hero who was approaching step by step. You boy, I'm going to kill you. The wolf monster struggled again, and even though he tore the vine off, the next second another vine continued to entangle him. Yun Fang jumped, and his right arm directly turned into a vine, stretching and shrinking into a huge fist made of vines. Then it swung heavily towards his head. Bang! Of a sound. The impact directly knocked the wolf monster and the vines wrapped around him away, and hit the wall hard. Poof! The wolf demon suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The wolf demon lost his voice. You are a professional hero. Quote. Unfortunately, you guessed wrong. Yun Fang said in a deep voice. At this moment, the wolf demon's eyes revealed a wave of fear, but the next moment, he just wanted to say something. Everything around him suddenly turned black, and in the darkness, a pair of eyes suddenly opened and looked at him. Lifespan, or destruction. Quote. The wolf monster widened his eyes, forced his saliva, and the next moment, he directly changed back to human form. What's going on? Why is everything around dark? The wolf monster shouted at Yun Fang. On his cheeks, dense sweat condensed. Lifespan, or destruction, Yun Fang said at one time. An incomparably powerful sense of oppression pressed on the wolf monster's body, followed closely on his body. A white object slowly floated out of his body. What is it? Quote. The wolf monster panicked at this moment, looking at the white object floating from his body. He was so frightened that he quickly turned around and ran. Whoops! Yun Fang directly grabbed the white object that appeared from his body with one hand, and immediately pulled it. In the sight of the wolf monster, it was as if it had fallen into a bottomless pit, and the only light that had been the only light disappeared without a trace at this moment. The moment when Yun Fang completely pulled the white object out of his body. The wolf monster's eyes turned white, and the next moment, he leaned forward and finally fell to the ground. 47 years life. Yun Fang looked at the white object in his hand, muttered to himself, and then absorbed it. As for the darkness that the wolf monster saw, it was completely his fear, and in fact, everything around him was still the same. Yun Fang looked at the corpse of the wolf monster who fled to the alley, and said, I accept this big gift from you. Quote. At this moment, warm applause sounded around, and Yun Fang subconsciously looked back. At this moment, behind him, surrounded by melon-eating masses. Is this young man a new professional hero? How come I haven't seen it before? Regardless of whether he is new or not, anyway, he is a big hero for the sake of fame. It's so powerful, 3 or 2 strokes to solve this robber. In the face of this group of people, there are all kinds of discussions. At this moment, the professional hero Dense Forest Shinwei also arrived just in time and fell in front of Yun Fang. A young hero whose popularity is rising rapidly, the personality can turn his body into a plant. The signature trick is preemptive sumac lock, which can hold the enemy tightly. But it is not good at dealing with enemies of the flame system. His personality is very similar to Yun Fang's Mu Dun, but in that aspect, he is incomparable to Mu Duan. In the world of Hokage, chakra is required to use Mudu, and when here, Yun Fang only needs to consume physical energy to use Mudu. Dense Forest Shinwei first glanced at the wolf monster in the alley and confirmed that he was the prisoner who had robbed many sects before. He walked over, crouched, and examined the body of a wolf monster, but found that he was dead. He was immediately shocked, and quickly looked up towards the position where Yun Fang was standing just now. But Yun Fang has already gone some distance. Immediately, he quickly ran up and shouted at Yun Fang's back, "Wait a minute." Quote. Yun Fang stopped his steps, and then turned his head. In fact, just now he wanted to get out. It was simply easy, but Yun Fang knew that he couldn't escape, and he wouldn't mess around until he knew much about the situation in this world. "He was killed by you?" Dense Forest Kamui asked. Yun Fang did not hide it, and calmly said, "I am for self-preservation. If you don't believe it, you can ask them." Quote. "I saw it, it was the monster who attacked this young man first." Yes, I saw it too." Dense Forest Shinwei smiled awkwardly, and then calmed the crowd. "Don't misunderstand, I'm just curious. He is a prisoner who has committed many crimes, and it should be said that he needs to be handed over to the police station to deal with. However, this is an unexpected situation. I will report it to the above." "That's none of my business, I'll go first," Yun Fang said softly. "No, wait, I have a question for you. How did you beat him to death?" Dense Forest Kamui asked. Yun Fang hesitated for a while. Of course he wouldn't be stupid and said to him, "I'm sorry, I can't tell you." Quote. Dense Forest Shinwei smiled awkwardly and said, "Then you can tell me, what is your name?" Quote. Cloud Wind. Merlot Cloud Wind. Quote. "My name is Dense Forest Shinwei. I see that you are quite young, because you should be a student." Dense Forest Shinwei said mildly. Yun Fang nodded. "Okay, there are still things I need to deal with here. I won't accompany you. If you are a student, I believe we will meet again." Dense Forest Shinwei Dao. Looking at the back of the Dense Forest Shinwei, Yun Fang shook his head wordlessly and muttered, "Don't meet again." Quote. In fact, these who gained personality and then mutated their bodies, in Yun Fang's eyes, felt quite pitiful. If there is a personality that will mutate, Yun Fang prefers not to have a personality. After Yun Fang left, Dense Forest Shinwei made a call. The call was answered quickly. "It's me, Dense Forest Kamui. Isn't there a robbery on your side? I dare not go over now." The mountain woman replied. "No, I didn't call you to tell you about the robber. Now the robber has been caught." The mountain woman froze for a moment and wondered, "Then what are you going to tell me?" "I have something on hand right now. I want to ask you to help me check someone's information." Dense Forest Shinwei said softly. The mountain woman smiled and said into the phone, "I'm busy too." "When you are busy with the matter at hand, are you going to find out?" Quote. The current Dense Forest Shinwei immediately wanted to know Yun Fang's information, but the matter at hand needed to delay him a lot of time. He felt that if he didn't immediately know Yun Fang's information, he wouldn't be able to concentrate on his work. "Dissatisfied with your statement, the robber who escaped from us last time in a row died." "Dead." The mountain lady froze for a moment, and then continued, "You beat him to death." Quote. "No, not me, a very young student." Dense Forest Kamui explained. "Okay, Dense Forest Shinwei, we've been partners for so long, don't want me to help you with things, if nothing happens." "I'm busy." The mountain woman laughed. "Wait." As soon as Dense Forest Shinwei heard that the mountain woman was about to hang up the phone, he immediately became a little anxious. "I'm not fooling you. This robber was not killed by me. He was really a student, and the robber died extremely strangely, and there was no injury on his body." The mountain woman was silent for a while, and said, "Are you sure what you said is true, not to fool me?" Quote. "You all said that we have been partners for so long, so we all have a little trust in each other." Dense Forest Shinwei said with slight disappointment. "Okay, I'll check it for you. Tell me the name, and I'll see what kind of personality is so weird. If nothing else, I'll hang up first." The mountain woman said. "Aha, his name is Merlot Yun Fang." Quote. "Okay, I see." Toot toot. After hanging up the phone, Dense Forest Shinwei sighed deeply, and then, as long as he was busy with the matter at hand, he could also know the information of Yun Fang. On the other hand, Yun Fang also returned home, after learning about the history of this world on the computer. He will give life and soul to all the items in his room to the life and soul he takes from the wolf monster. But the lifespan is only 1 month. At this moment, the whole room became lively. It seems that the ability of the soul fruit is quite good. Yun Fang smiled slightly. He clearly remembered that among One Piece, and used her soul to create the highest level of homets, which were Sun Prometheus, Thundercloud Zeus, Napoleon the Double Cap and so on. The strength of these high-level homies is also not to be underestimated. Of course, Yun Fang is also interested in this, but now is not the time. His physical strength still needs to be improved, because the first use of Mudun and Soul Fruit consumes his physical energy. Master, what are you thinking? Play with us. Pillow ran out of bed, rubbed the floor, and shouted as he looked at Yun Fang. Yun Fang subconsciously turned his head, and his face suddenly turned dark. His thoughts were a Chinese person. How is it possible to allow pillows to rub and play with the floor? Where did you come from? Give me where to go back. Your range of motion must not get out of bed, otherwise, I will pump out your souls. Come up, the master is angry. The bed on the side shouted towards the pillow on the floor. Immediately after that, all the objects next to them that were given souls said one after another. The owner is angry. The owner is angry. The pillow was also amused, and he immediately ran to bed. Now I will make a rule for you, except for the bed, you can move around in this room. What about the bed? The quilt asked. Yun Fang gave him a blank look and said, I can only be in bed, and I can't make any sound when I'm resting. Otherwise I will draw out your souls too. Quote. Ding ding. Dense Lin Shenwei quickly took out his mobile phone in his pocket and said, how is it, did you find out? Quote. The mountain woman frowned and said in a deep voice, our basic trust is gone. Quote. What do you mean? The foggy water at the head of the dense forest divine power. I fooled them in every possible way to find out his information, and it turned out, speaking of the back, the mountain woman doesn't want to say it. The result, the dense forest divine power is very impatient. I'll send it to you, see for yourself. After the mountain woman finished speaking, she hung up the phone directly. After a while, Dense Forest Shenwei's mobile phone made a few more dings. Dense Forest Shenwei hurriedly clicked in, and at this time, a picture appeared on the mobile phone. He clicks to zoom in. The next moment, his eyes widened. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Quote. Mibayashi Kamui looked at his phone and was shocked. Personality, Spitfire. The mouth can spew flames. Dense Forest Kamui read the information sent by the mountain woman. The expression was so strange. Ding. He blackened the screen of his phone, and then sat down on the chair next to him. Tilting his head to the sky, he muttered, is personality a fire-breathing fire? However, according to the masses, his personality is very similar to mine, and his hands can become vines. Quote. But why is it Spitfire in his profile? Does he have two personalities? No, or say three. Quote. Dense Forest Kamui reasoned that even if his personality is vine, or fire-breathing, then the robber should also leave scars when fighting. However, it is so weird, not only does there not have any wounds on the body, but even the clothes are so clean. Therefore, Dense Forest Shenwei guessed that Yun Fang may have three personalities, and if so, then what is his third personality? Phew. Dense Forest Shenwei sighed, which made him strange and puzzled. At this moment, he suddenly felt that finding out the truth was more interesting than fighting the bad guys. I'll definitely find out what's going on. Dense Forest Shenwei said in a deep voice. The next day, morning, Yun Fang learned from his parents that today he was going to take Xiangying's entrance test. At first, Yun Fang thought that this world was also a system crossing error, and did not take it to heart. However, now that it has been determined that this world is not a crossing error, then Yun Fang can be regarded as calmly accepted. After eating breakfast, Yun Fang set off. 8:30. Yun Fang looked at the huge floor in front of him, and on the right side, it was written, Xiangying High School, Admission Test Venue. It should be here, Yun Fang muttered, and then strode in. He looked at the ticket in his hand, the test number 2265, the test site, the acting venue B. After walking inside, he came to a dark room, which was almost full of people at the moment. The specifications of this room are similar to those of a movie theater, and there is also a large screen in front of it. He found his place and sat down. After about 10 minutes, the seats were all full, and the audience was silent. Snap! The chandelier on the top of the screen in front suddenly lit up, followed by a picture of a heroic logo on the top of the screen. Immediately, a man with blonde hair stood on end and shouted, Dear listeners, welcome to my live broadcast today. Quote. And he is the sound hero, Present Mac. Present Mac was very enthusiastic, and after saying several words in a row, he saw that the audience was indifferent, and he had to give up. It's really boring. Then, all the audience who should take the exam, I will explain to you the summary of the practical test concisely. After some explanation, it is probably to enter the exercise field and use their personalities to take down the simulated enemy. There are 4 types of enemies, and each type of defeat him will get a different score. After Present Mac's speech, Yun Fang also got on the bus and went to the exercise venue B. In the car, he saw Midoriya Izuku, who looked dumbfounded. The exercise venue was not far away, and after the bus drove for a while, it arrived. Getting out of the car, they came to a gate, and Yun Fang looked at Midoriya Izuku in front of him, his whole body trembling. Seeing this scene, Yun Fang couldn't help but laugh. Immediately after, everyone cast a strange look towards Yun Fang. Snap! At this time, a hand slapped on Yun Fang's shoulder, and Yun Fang subconsciously turned his head. Did you come to the exam to interfere with others? Tenya Iida stared at Yun Fang with a dead fish face. Yun Fang frowned, and then shook off his hand on his shoulder. Sneered. Nosy people die forever the earliest. Quote. Iida's face became even more gloomy. What did you say? Quote. Stay away from me, Yun Fang said in a deep voice. The green tendons on Tenya Iida's forehead were erect, his hands were clenched into fists, and the atmosphere around him instantly began to be suppressed. At this moment, on a tall tower on the side, Present Mac shouted at the clouds, What are you two doing? Do you want to fight? Quote. And you, there will be no countdown preparation for actual combat. Run, run, the race has begun. Quote. As soon as Present Mac's voice fell, the next moment, someone started running wildly. Yun Fang leaked a weird smile towards Iida Tenya, and then turned around, but he didn't run, still walking unhurriedly. With 3 or 2 efforts, everyone surpassed Yun Fang. When Yun Fang entered, several rumbling sounds were heard. It seems that someone scored so quickly, Yun Fang said calmly. He pondered in place for a while, then ran in the right direction. In an instant, the green robot suddenly burst out of the alley, with 3 characters written on his right and left sides. 3 points to hand. Yun Fang's one arm turned into a vine, and the blink of an eye went directly through his abdomen. Immediately after, he ran quickly again, and after more than a minute, his score reached the passing line. Immediately, he stopped, ran to a tall building, and sat down on his butt. For the first, Yun Fang is not interested, he just needs to achieve a passing score. Next, wait for the exam to end, Yun Fang muttered. Inside the monitoring room. Who is this student? In the dark monitoring room, one of the reviewers sitting in the front row asked. Genzu, the principal of Shangying, flipped through the information book in his hand, and then said gently, Maro Yun Fang, from Chiyun Middle School. Quote. UA's principal, Nezu, is a talking animal. It is rare for animals to have personality, and there is a scar on the right eye. Cheerful and approachable. He was played by humans before the awakening of his personality, and has a black personality that is unknown and likes to play with and ravage his opponents. This year's students are very strong. One of the judges teased with a smile. This student is worth developing. Whether it is the beginning or the enemy, he is very calm, and the momentum he emits can even be similar to a professional hero. Another reviewer continued. His personality is very similar to that of the dense forest Kamui. When the principal heard this, he couldn't help frowning, because the Merlot Yun Fang written in the admission materials had a personality that breathed fire. These materials will not be fake, they are generally personally tested, and after many aspects of determination, they are transmitted here. What is he doing now? One of the judges looked at the cloud wind on the screen, and at the moment he was squinting and sleeping. His score has reached the passing line. It seems that he is not ready to get a high score. This kid is really interesting. If he continues to grab points, it is estimated that many students who are in a test with him will suffer. What this judge said is not unreasonable. With the speed of Yun Fang, if he wants to get a high score, he will kill more strangely, and some people with slow hands will inevitably be eliminated. So, they can be said to be very lucky. Principal Nezu, this kid is a good seedling, but you still need to train him well. The principal nodded and said with a smile, of course. Quote. So young, the talent is so good, do not take a crooked road, after Xiangyang graduates, it will inevitably become a big thing. And behind the review in the monitoring room, Olmut was also a little surprised. This boy is the one in the park yesterday. Olmut's face gradually leaked into a playful smile. The 10-minute test, short or long, sounded with a siren. Percent Max shouted, test over. Quote, those who pass the score leak a smile, while those who fail are unwilling. After Yun Fang heard Percent Max announcement, he also opened his eyes and walked in the direction of the crowd. As soon as he closed his eyes, Yun Fang almost fell asleep. Gathering into the crowd, Iida Tenya set his sights on Yun Fang. Yun Fang leaked a contemptuous look towards him. What's going on with this guy? Since the opening, I haven't seen his figure. Quote, no messy breathing, no dirty, no sweating, could it be that this kid didn't beat any of them? Quote, or is this guy here to interfere with other people's exams? Tenya Iida muttered softly. Okay, everyone worked hard. With the sound of a voice, everyone subconsciously looked back, one holding a needle-shaped handrail in his hand and wearing a white coat. The old lady with a strange helmet on her head walked over with a smile on her face. This old lady belonged to the very strange kind of person in Yun Fang's first eyes, holding a needle-shaped handrail in her hand, and Nima had a needle tube inserted in her head. Sure enough, many people in this world are weird. Yun Fang muttered softly. Hard work, she said as she walked up to an injured man. He took out a few colorful candies in his pocket and said with a smile, come on, this is gummies, come and eat gummies. Quote, a lightly injured tester took the gummies and replied, thank you. Quote, come on, and so will you. With that, she walked towards another test subject who was slightly injured. After the test, Yun Fang walked out of the Xiangyang admission test venue, really ready to go home, but at this moment, heavy footsteps came from behind him, and immediately after, a figure appeared in front of Yun Fang. And this figure is none other than Tenya Iida. Iida Tenya looked at Yun Fang expressionlessly, and said, are you here to go sightseeing? A rambling look. Quote, Yun Fang looked at the Iida Tenya in front of him for a moment, and then sneered, oh, it's you, didn't I warn you to stay away from me? Quote, if you come here and don't work hard for heroes, please leave. Iida said seriously. Then again, who are you? Yun Fang's eyes revealed a trace of anger. When he didn't cross over, he only watched My Hero Academia anime and only watched a few episodes, so it's normal that he doesn't have the slightest impression of Tenya Iida. Tenya Iida, give you 3 seconds to disappear in front of my eyes. Yun Fang said coldly. The green tendons on Tenya's forehead were erect, and he yelled at Yun Fang, what do you say? Quote, as soon as his voice fell, his eyes suddenly turned black, and suddenly the whole person flew out upside down. What I hate the most is your self-righteous look, Yun Fang said in a deep voice. The punch just now directly knocked Tenya Iida stunned, and he covered his mouth and stood up, only to find that his hands were stained with bright red blood. So fast, is it so powerful, could it be that the previous loose appearance was pretended? Iida muttered. Tread. Yun Fang pressed towards him step by step. Tenya Iida was also angry, and his feet spewed gas from the brush of the exhaust pipe like a car. And this is the personality of Tenya Iida. His personality is called the engine, and he has a car-like trachea on his calf. It has super fast action power, the main fuel is 100% orange juice, and drinking carbonated drinks will turn off the fire. It can be switched to first, second and third gear to adapt to various situations. Bang! The exhaust pipe on his feet suddenly erupted powerful gas, he clenched the fist in his hand, and the whole person smashed towards the cloud wind like a sharp arrow. Snap! Yun Fang reached out and directly took his punch, and Iida Tenya was suddenly taken aback. I've wanted to kill you since just now, and now I have this opportunity. Yun Fang said calmly. Saying that, Yun Fang's other hand turned into a vine, and in front, the vine formed a very sharp thorn. Go and die, Yun Fang said, and with a snort, he directly waved his hand and stabbed towards Iida Tenya. Iida Tenya's pupils contracted violently, and the exhaust pipe on his feet was opened to the maximum, and with a bang, he barely opened Yun Fang's hand, which was regarded as picking up a life. But his coat was not so lucky, and it was directly penetrated by the cloud wind. Breaking free from Yun Fang's hand, Iida Tenya hit the ground and rubbed on the ground for some distance, and this time, he quickly got up. There was a fear in his eyes. This fool is really here. If I hadn't escaped at that moment, I would have been killed by him. Iida said in a wistful manner. Originally, he thought that Yun Fang was just saying it casually, but after what happened just now, he was sure that what Yun Fang said was true, and he really wanted to kill himself. Iida Tenya was panicking now. He didn't want to have any intersection with Yun Fang, this madman. Immediately, he quickly turned around and ran towards the direction of the Xiangying experimental venue, but at this moment, his eyes suddenly fell into darkness. Tenya Iida was stunned for a moment, and quickly turned his head, only to find a pair of huge pupils looking at him. Dara. He was directly paralyzed by fright, his whole body trembling, while shouting. What's going on? Why is this? Moisture. In his body, white objects began to float, and Yun Fang leaked a smile towards him. This smile couldn't help but make Tenya Iida cool from head to toe. It is estimated that if he did not die this time, Yun Fang's smile would be a shadow for his whole life. Suddenly, at this moment, a loud voice sounded. Hey, what are you two doing? The appearance of % Mac made Yun Fang give up the ability to use the soul fruit. After Iida Tenya returned to normal, he quickly ran towards % Mac, and said in horror, he's going to kill me. Quote. % Mac naturally did not believe what Tenya Iida said, because in his eyes, Yun Fang and Tenya Iida were all children. Can the child's words be taken seriously? In Present's eyes, sometimes yes, sometimes not. Okay, you two are okay and hurry home. Present Mac shouted. When Iida Tenya heard this, he immediately shivered. Well, okay. Yun Fang nodded and left casually. Present Mac slowly lowered his head and glared at Tenya Iida. Are you going to go home with my thighs? Quote. Tenya Iida slowly let go and barely stood up, but his legs were still shaking. He couldn't imagine if he would still be able to stand here now if Present Mac hadn't appeared just now. You two, it's okay to hurry home. Present Mac continued. Iida Tenya took a few deep breaths of cold air, recovered his mood, and whispered, I know. Quote. I'm back. With a click, Yun Fang opened the door, and after changing his shoes, he walked towards the living room. And today, Yun Fang's father asked for leave today in order to wait for his son's information, and the two of them returned as soon as they saw Yun Fang. Immediately walked in front of Yun Fang. How's that, son? You didn't disappoint your mother, did you? Her mother asked eagerly. Yun Fang smiled lightly and said, just passed. Quote. Phew. The hall suddenly fell silent, and the next moment, Yun Fang's parents jumped up excitedly. I knew my son was a genius. What you want to eat? Mom will make it for you. Whatever, Yun Fang said with a smile. That's not okay. Mom rewards you. Braised fish, Yun Fang said softly. Braised fish. Well, you rest first. Mom will go buy it for you right away. Her mother couldn't close her mouth with a smile and ran out. Outside, Yun Fang still faintly heard that she showed off to her neighbors that her son was admitted to Xiangying High School. Good son, worthy of being my son, really did not disgrace me. Yun Fang's father gave a thumbs up and continued. In the future, there will be no pocket money, so I can find my father to take it at any time. Quote. Yun Fang nodded. I'm tired for a day today. If there is nothing else, I will go to rest first. Quote. Go. Immediately, Yun Fang returned to his room, and the objects that were given souls by Yun Fang said to Yun Fang one after another. Welcome host back. Welcome, master, come to me, I'm comfortable here. The bed shouted towards Yun Fang. Has the master passed the exam? The mirror on the side asked. Yun Fang nodded. Then congratulations master, the mirror said. Yun Fang sat on the chair, then leaned back against the back of the chair, looked up at the ceiling, and was thinking about things. And the object with a soul on the side is also interesting, and when he sees Yun Fengji thinking about things, he no longer bothered. After about a while, Yun Fang suddenly opened his eyes, and just now, he suddenly thought of something. Immediately afterward, he stood up abruptly. The object next to him that was given a soul saw Yun Fang's situation and asked worriedly, Master, are you all right? Quote. Nonsense, how could something happen to the master? It may be that he is too tired from today's exam. Master, are you lie down here and rest here? No thanks, I'm fine, I'm going out now. Yun Fang said softly, and then trotted out. Just now, Yun Fang thought that inside One Piece, Ant used her soul to create the highest level of homies. They are the Sun Prometheus, the Thundercloud Zeus, and the Two-Horned Cap Napoleon. With these high-level homies, Auntie is equivalent to having the ability to control the weather. Not only that, these high-level homies also have the ability to fight. So, now Yun Fang's goal is to have a homies who can fight. Yun Fang came to a deserted forest. Let's try it next, he muttered. Immediately slapped the ground, and suddenly, with a bang, a vine gushed out on the ground. Yun Fang's mind thought of the elf appearance he had seen before, and immediately after, the vine was directly carved into the elf appearance that Yun Fang was thinking. At this moment it is soulless. Yun Fang pulled out his own soul from himself, and immediately injected it into this lifeless vine. The next moment, I only saw a flash of light, and this elf suddenly appeared eyes, mouth, and nose. This homies that Yun Fang created with his soul has a certain memory of the original owner. So the moment Yun Fang was created, he had his own independent personality. Yun Fang looked at the elf in front of him, and couldn't help but change his face and muttered. Why shrunk? Quote, indeed, the model just now was as big as Yun Fang, but after injecting the soul, it became the size of 2 palms. This particular shrinkage is a little bit worse. But the appearance has not changed, it is a very cute elf, but the body is a little small. After glancing around, the elf said politely to Yun Fang, Master. Quote, Yun Fang subconsciously nodded, and then muttered, I like it very much, it's cute, but what I need is an elf who can fight, and this little man doesn't have much effect. Quote, alas, the first high-grade homies I made was a failure. Master, don't underestimate me, I'm very powerful. The wood elf pouted and retorted towards Yun Fang. Yun Fang froze for a moment. He naturally hoped that the first homies he made would be more powerful, but it was a hard injury to be as big as 2 palms. What went wrong? The clouds and winds are now foggy. Master, you are optimistic. The wood elf whispered to Yun Fang, and then shouted. With a bang, the wood elf's skin was similar to that of a human, but after he drank, his whole body turned green. Immediately after, I saw his small arm stretched out and struck towards a century-old tree. The century-old tree was directly shot up by the roots. Yun Fang was slightly surprised when he saw this scene. Of course, what surprised him the most was not that the 100-year-old tree was shot away, but that she could also use Mu Duan's ability. The next moment, Yun Fang suddenly seemed to understand something, and he felt a little strange before, why this elf had human skin. Now, the arm can be extended again. At first Yun Fang is not sure, but now at this moment, he can be 80% sure. This wood spirit he created with his own soul, like Yun Fang, has the ability of wood escape. Master, is this okay? Do I need to continue to show you? The wood elf asked towards Yun Fang. Yun Fang shook his head and said with a smile on his face, no need, I didn't expect it, although I am small, my strength is quite good. Quote, hearing Yun Fang praise himself, the wood elf flew around happily, and his appearance changed back to his previous cute appearance. Thinking that Yun Fang's current physical strength was already a little overwhelming just to create a high-level homies, as for creating others, he's ready to come step by step. Yun Fang is also very casual about calling this aspect, and he directly calls this wood elf a wood elf. The appearance of the wood elf, Yun Fang's parents were a little surprised at first, but after Yun Fang's brainwashing, they were directly fooled. Soon the time came to the first day of Yun Fang's enrollment. The competition rate for admission to the hero department of Xiangying High School exceeds 300 every year, excluding the 4 places guaranteed. The number of students admitted to the normal examination is 36, 18.5, and there are only 2 classes in total. The class assigned by Yun Fang is 1A. At the moment, within class 1A. Don't put your feet on your desk, Tenya Iida said to the Bakugai Katsuji on the side. Bakugo's personality is explosive, and the sweat of the palm mutates, secreting sweat similar to nitroglycerin. Feel free to make it explode. It can create explosions where the palm of the hand touches, and can also convert explosive wind into propulsion. The power of the explosion is proportional to the degree of sweating, so it is explosive in summer and slow in winter. But the most interesting thing is his violent temper. As soon as he heard Iida Tenya say about himself, Bakugao Katsuki's face changed instantly, and he sneered back, Don't you think it's very sorry for Xiangying's seniors and the people who make desks? Tenya Iida said. Bakugao Shengji stretched his neck, and said with a long Aoshan expression, don't you think, which junior high school of yours kid came from? A small supporting role. Quote. I am Tenya Iida, who graduated from a private smart high school. Bakugao Shengji continued Long Aoshan's expression and said, smart, isn't that the group elites? It seems to have the value of slaughter. Quote. Iida Tenya was stunned and muttered, the value of the slaughter, you are too cruel, are you really a person who aspires to be a hero? Quote. Che, go aside, watch out for me slaughtering you. Bakugao Katsuji directly glanced at him. Listening to Bakuga Katsuki's words, Iida Tenya instantly recalled that these words seemed familiar. The next moment, he thought back to what Yun Fang had said to him before, but the words were different and the meaning was very similar. I don't know why, at this moment, he also had a trace of fear for Bakugao Shengji. For Yun Fang, he didn't want to see this cup. He didn't dare to speak, who knew if he was the next madman, if he him off, he would really come and kill himself later. At this moment, as if he had lost his soul, he returned to his seat and did well. And at this moment, Yun Fang also came to the hero department of Xiangying High School. Looking at this school, he couldn't help but feel his nose sour. Many years ago, he was also a student. He never imagined that he would one day become what he is now. This school is so big, it is really difficult to find a classroom. Yun Fang muttered. The wood elf sitting on Yun Fang's shoulder rubbed his eyes, then stretched his waist and yawned, Master, isn't it time for breakfast yet? Quote. It's time for breakfast long gone, and you can only wait for lunch. Yun Fang replied. Ah, the wood elf flew in front of Yun Fang and spoke, Master, why don't you call me? Quote. Seeing you sleeping so soundly, I can't bear to wake you up. Yun Fang said gently. Last night, the wood elf played with the mirror for one night, and basically after Yun Fang woke up, the wooden elf ran to Yun Fang's shoulder to sleep. That's why there is this scene of skipping breakfast. I'm hungry, Master. The wood elf looked aggrieved, touched his stomach, and coquettishly said towards Yun Fang. Yun Fang took out a loaf of bread from his bag and said, sit down obediently after eating. Quote. The wood elf's expression instantly changed 360 degrees, took the bread with a smile, and began to bite into it. Looking at her appearance, Yun Fang was a little skeptical at this moment, whether he had created a combat assistant or a pet. At this moment, a soft voice suddenly came from the side of the cloud wind. Wow, what is this? Leery Mikako suddenly ran in front of Yun Fang, and the eyes of the water spirit stared at the wood elf. How cute. A smile bloomed on Leery Mikako's face. My pet, Yun Fang explained in the back. Pet, Leery Mikako froze, this kind of pet she had never seen before. What kind of pet is this? It's so cute. Richie Mikako then asked. While chewing bread, the wood elf said vaguely towards Leery Mikako, Human, your vision is very good. Quote. Hurry up and eat yours, and if you are praised by others, you will go to heaven, right? Yun Fang glanced at her, and then said to Leery Mikako, this is an elf. Quote. Elves, what is a genie? Richie Mikako asked suspiciously. If you want to ask what the elf is exactly, in fact, Yun Fang doesn't understand it very well. Elves are probably pets. Cloud Wind Channel. Leery Mikako nodded as if she didn't understand. She wanted to reach out and touch the wood elf, but was quickly dodged by the wood elf. What are you going to do? No one can touch me except the owner. The wood elf glared at Leery Mikako. I'm sorry, seeing you so cute, I can't help but want to touch it. Leery Mikako quickly apologized. What are you two doing here? Suddenly, a voice came from behind them in the clouds. They subconsciously looked back, but found that a sleeping bag in the shape of a yellow caterpillar appeared in their sight. Leery Mikako was directly startled and took several steps back. Yun Fang looked at it suspiciously. Zizzy. Suddenly, the yellow caterpillar-shaped sleeping bag rolled around, and a haggard face appeared in their sight. And this man is none other than Aizawa Yuta, that is, Yun Fang's homeroom teacher. Zizzy. Aizawa unzipped it, put something in his mouth, and with a gentle blow, the sleeping bag stood up directly. Immediately after, he pulled down the chain of the sleeping bag and walked out of it. He was very impressed by Yun Fang, because during the last Xiangying entrance test, he found that Yun Fang was very similar to him. They don't like to show their heads, especially after the cloud wind score reaches the passing line, and then they run to sleep. He has been a teacher for so long, and this is the first time he has seen such an interesting person. I'm your homeroom teacher, please give me more advice, Aizawa said weakly. Yun Fang's first impression of him was that this person seemed to be the one with serious kidney deficiency. Okay, you two hurry back to the classroom, Aizawa continued. Yun Fang and Leary Mikako nodded and walked towards the 1A classroom. Aizawa slowly followed behind. After a while, Yun Fang came to the door of the classroom, pushed the door open, and walked in. The eyes of the class then turned towards Yun Fang and Leary Mikako. When Iida Tenya saw the cloud wind, his pupils suddenly contracted violently, and sweat began to condense on his face, which was cold from head to toe. Why is this guy here? Quote, saying that, he set his sights on Bakugao Katsuki again. It's over, there are two such terrible people in this class. Tenya Iida's face was directly gloomy to the extreme. The moment Yun Fang walked into the classroom, many people noticed the body of the wood elf on his shoulder. When Yun Fang passed by 8,000,000's side, 8,000,000 subconsciously said, "What a cute doll." 8,000,000 thought it was a doll at the first sight of the wood elf. But the next moment, the wood elf looked back at 8,000,001 and stuck out his tongue at her, and 8,000,000 leaned back in shock. Move, not a doll toy. Quote, he was the one who took the entrance exam with me last time. Midoriya Izuku muttered as he looked at Yun Fang. Sure enough, he also entered the hero department. One of the feelings that the cloud wind gave Midoriya for a long time was that it was hidden deeply. After scanning all the students in the class, Aizawa reintroduced, I am your homeroom teacher, Aizawa Shuda, please advise more. Quote, almost all the students in the class responded with some surprise. Okay, don't waste time, get dressed and come to the playground. Saying that, Aizawa took out a blue, white and red tracksuit in his yellow sleeping bag and motioned for them to wear it. On the playground, personality mastery test, everyone looked at Aizawa's back and said in unison. What about the entrance ceremony? What about the introduction of the school? Leary Mikako said. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time to participate in such leisurely activities. One of the main selling points of Xiangyang is the liberal school spirit, and this also applies to teachers. Quote, you must have done it in junior high school, right? Disable individual fitness tests. Quote, while speaking, Aizawa took out something like a mobile phone, and the catalog inside recorded the items tested in junior high school. Our country is still using those unified records to set average standards. It is not reasonable at all. This is the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology neglecting its duties. Quote, the first place in the actual skill test is Bakugao, right? Saying that, Aizawa's gaze cast on Bakugao Katsuki. Bakugao Katsuki was stunned and nodded. In junior high school, how many meters can a softball throw? Aizawa asked. 67 meters. Then, use your personality and throw it away. Bakugao Katsuji nodded, then took the softball and went to the test site, while everyone watched. Aizawa instructed on the side, as long as you don't go out of that circle, you can do whatever you want. Hurry, use all your strength. Quote. So, Bakugao Katsuji moved his muscles, held the softball in his hand and prepared for action, and then used his whole body strength to throw it fiercely. Die. Quote. Bang. At the moment he threw out the softball, a flame suddenly appeared in the sky, and the softball disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. A few seconds later, an object similar to a mobile phone in Aizawa's hand clanged a few times, followed by a number. He glanced at it, then held it up to the other classmates and showed them around. When everyone saw 705 meters, they were slightly surprised. 705 meters, make no mistake. Quote, what's going on? It's funny. You can use your personality to your heart's content, it's worthy of being a hero department. The eyes of several classmates flashed with excitement. Midoriya Idhisa hadn't been so excited, he had just gotten from Olmut, Alpharone's ability. They have not yet been adjusted. Once they play at full strength, they will damage the enemy by 1000, and the self-damage will naturally be 1000. His eyes widened, staring at Aizawa Yuta, and his heart was panicked. On the contrary, Yun Fang is very calm, he does not want to get the first place, nor does he want the last place. Okay, the next one, who's coming? Aizawa glanced at them. When Midoriya Izukuichi heard this, he swallowed his saliva and secretly shouted in his heart, "Don't call me, don't call me." Quote. Aizawa slowly raised his hand and pointed in the direction of Yun Fang, "That's it." Quote. "Me?" Yun Fang asked. "That's right, it's you. Aizawa Mitamaiki." Yun Fang nodded, then went over to the side to take a softball and walked into a circle. As long as people don't go out of the circle, they can do whatever they want. Yun Fang asked towards Aizawa. Yes, as long as people don't go out of the circle, they can do whatever they want. Aizawa Mitamaiki. Yun Fang nodded, holding the softball in his hand, and under the softball, that is, Yun Fang's palm, a white object was injected into the softball. "No need to come back," Yun Fang shouted, then threw the ball fiercely, and with a bang, the softball was thrown away, and a few seconds later, it disappeared from their sight. After not seeing the softball, Aizawa did not continue to look at the sky, but cast his eyes on the instrument in his hand that resembled a mobile phone. But the next moment, he jerked, and the softball's connection signal was broken. What's going on? How can the signal break? Even if the distance brushes out, it will not break. Aizawa muttered softly. In the next second, he cast his gaze on Yun Fang's body, and then a meaningful smile leaked out of his mouth. Mo Fei, what did this kid do just now? The thought flashed through his mind instantly. As for the other students, they are looking forward to the distance of Aizawa Shuta announcing the cloud wind. The softball seems to have malfunctioned, you can lose it again. Aizawa said calmly. Yun Fang seemed to have thought of something, nodded, and said, "Okay, teacher." Quote. Then, Aizawa handed Yun Fang a softball again, and after Yun Fang took the softball, he made a preparatory move. This time, he did not inject soul into the softball, because after the soul injection, the softball would be disconnected from the instrument in Aizawa's hand. He simply used Mu Duan's ability, strengthened his right arm, followed closely, and threw it directly with half of his strength. Boom! The softball flew directly towards the sky, and disappeared directly from their sight in the next second. Ding! The instrument in Aizawa's hand transmitted back the results of the distance. Aizawa glanced at it, and then showed to the classmates on the side, 702 meters. Quote. It's so close to the first one, it seems that this one is also very powerful. That's awesome, it's almost the same as Xiao Sheng. Midoriya Izuku cast an envious look towards Yun Fang. At this moment, Iida Tenya's face was very strange, and he secretly thought in his heart, it's not this that matters, it was he who lost 702 meters without using his personality. Quote. Just now, Yun Fang used Mu Dun to strengthen his right arm, but his right arm did not change much, so it gave people a false vision like not using personality. And when Iida Tenya fought Yun Fang last time, he knew that Yun Fang's personality was similar to that of Vine's. This time there was no abnormality, so Iida Tenya thought that Yun Fang could be lost so far without using his personality, which scared him to the point of softening his feet. Next, it's you. Aizawa Mita headed for 8,000,000 ways. This time, there were a total of 8 test items, and after Yun Fang had all been tested, he waited for the results to be announced. After a few moments, everyone was already tested. Then, hurry up and announce the results. The total score is very simple, it is the score of the total of all the achievements. It's too time consuming to explain verbally one by one, so I'll put it together and make it public. Saying that, Aizawa used the instrument in his hand to gently press, followed by a virtual screen floating in midair. And what is recorded on the screen is their total score. The first one is 8,000,000, the second is Scorched, and the third is Explosive. Yun Fang ranked 10th. The last place is Midoriya Izuku. After all, his personality has not yet been run in, and the last one can be imagined. Iida Tenya glanced at Yun Fang's back and muttered, he definitely didn't use all his strength. Quote. Is he hiding his strength? In just a few minutes, Iida Tenya reasoned about dozens of ideas that were not related at all. After the rankings were announced, Aizawa left, leaving only the 1A class remaining on the playground. Master, it's so angry, since you are ranked 10th. The wood elf grumbled. Immediately after, everyone around cast their eyes on the wood elf, and the next moment, basically all the girls gathered around. What is it? So cute. Talking yay. Wow, that's amazing. As soon as Yun Fang entered the classroom before, they noticed the wooden spirit on Yun Fang's shoulder, but some people thought it was a pendant. So I didn't care too much, and when the cloud wind test was carried out later, the wood elf slept. The shoulders wrapped around Yun Fang were motionless, making people feel more like pendants. It wasn't until the wood elves woke up and spoke that they reacted, which was not a pendant at all. 8,000,000 was not too surprised, because when she first entered the classroom, she knew that it was not a doll, but a small thing with life. As for what it was, she didn't know. Can I touch her? 8,000,000 asked Yun Fang. Yun Fang hesitated for a moment and replied, Quote. 8,000,000 gang wanted to reach out and touch it, who knew that the wood elf quickly hid behind Yun Fang's neck and poked his head out. No, no one can touch me except the master. Quote. Seeing this situation, Yun Fang smiled slightly. I'm sorry, this guy is afraid of life. Quote. I'm Sao, did I hear me wrong, since this guy speaks so softly? Iida Tenya directly complained in his heart, but the next moment he recalled Yun Fang's eerie smile at him before. No, 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 it must be fake, I must have misheard. Iida muttered. However, after this series of things, Yun Fang secretly made up his mind that he would not let the wood elves appear in their sight next time. The day passed like this. As the sun set, Yun Fang packed up his things and left. Getting off the tram, he strode down the alley in the direction of his house. However, when he passed by a place where the crowd was relatively sparse, suddenly, two figures came out of the alley. Immediately after, two burly bodies stood in front of Yun Fang. One of the men was ugly looking, with 7 or 8 stitches on his face, and was a one-eyed dragon with a yellow hat on his head. The other one seems to be a mutated octopus. He has no hands, and instead of hands is the same thing as the tail of an octopus. He was even more outrageous. His head was all wrapped in bandages, only his eyes leaked out, and, at the eyes, he wore a pair of black sunglasses. Yun Fang sensed that something was wrong, followed closely, stopped the pace in his feet, and began to be vigilant. The ugly-looking man took out a photo in his pocket, compared it with Yun Fang, and then said, it seems that this kid is the kid. Quote. Is that the little one? Has Abu fallen to this extent? Since he was killed by a little furry child. The octopus monster satirized the man named Abu. I already feel pretty incredible that Abu would die at the hands of such a person. The ugly man added. No matter what, he is our friend, and this hatred must be avenged. The octopus said slowly. The octopus monster said and walked towards Yun Fang. Wake up, still sleep. Yun Fang reached out and grabbed the wood elf on his shoulder and flicked it a few times. What's wrong, master? The wood elf looked at Yun Fang with a confused look and asked. We seem to be in trouble. Yun Fang muttered. The wood elf was also clever, and as soon as he heard Yun Fang say that he was in trouble, he instantly began to guard the surroundings. Are they just the two? The wood elf asked. I don't know what the strength of the other party is, we can only fight steadily, plus this place is a little remote, even with the support of professional heroes. That will also take a while. Yun Fang said in a deep voice. Boy, I have no enmity with you, but if you kill my friend, I can only worship him with your blood. The octopus monster said to Yun Fang in its rough voice. Your friend, is it the one whose personality can turn into a giant wolf? Yun Fang asked expressionlessly. The octopus monster did not answer Yun Fang's words, but saw that his speed gradually increased, and the next moment he ran directly. Wood elf, Yun Fang shouted. Master, here it is. Saying that, the wood elf directly emitted a light, and the whole person changed. I saw that the wood elf's hand turned into a vine and began to stretch, and on the edge of the vine, sharp thorns also grew out. In the face of the attack launched by the wood elf, the octopus monster had no intention of slowing down. I saw him raise several of his octopus tails, the tip of which was aimed at the oncoming vine. Snap, syllable, quote, at the top of the tail, since a black thing spewed out, it directly corroded the vine. Seeing someone fighting, the people around were directly frightened and quickly hid away. Yun Fang looked at the octopus monster and froze. This is simply a mutated enhanced version of the octopus. It can also spray ink from the tail, and this ink also has a corrosive effect. The octopus monster came directly to the wood elf, and immediately flicked his octopus tail towards her. The wood elf quickly dodged. The cloud wind slapped the ground, booming, booming, and countless vines came out from the ground and wound towards the octopus monster. Do you think you'll catch me this way? The octopus sneered. Raising the tail of the octopus as to spew out a pool of black corrosive vines towards him. The wood elf wanted to continue attacking, but the next moment, he was directly said by Yun Fang, "Wood elf, come back." Quote. The wood elf was stunned and cast a puzzled look towards Yun Fang. This time is just the right time to test my limits, so I hope you don't interfere. Yun Fang said in a deep voice. Although the wood elf did not want Yun Fang to face it alone, Yun Fang's order was absolute and she could not disobey. Master, you have to be careful. The wood elf ordered. I see. This may be a good time for Yun Fang to test how strong his strength is, and now he is confused about his strength. Therefore, Yun Fang wanted to take advantage of this opportunity and use all his strength to see what he could achieve. Boy, the tone is not small. The octopus sneered. Just give up the struggle, the liquid decomposed in his body is enough to corrode your vines. The ugly man added. As long as you don't struggle, I promise to let you leave comfortably, you see, how? The octopus said slowly. For the words of the octopus monster, Yun Fang did not pay attention to it at the moment. He pondered for a while, and the next moment, a smile bloomed on his face. Although I don't know if I think my current physical strength can launch this attack, this is a difficult opportunity to try, and I am not ready to give up. Facing Yun Fang's self-talk, the octopus monster looked a little impatient, and roared at Yun Fang, since you don't know the height of the sky and the thickness of the earth, then I can only let you die a painful death. Quote. Say it. The octopus monster rushed directly towards the cloud wind. While raising his tail, he emitted those black liquids. Seeing this, Yun Fang quickly dodged, and then shouted, coming. Quote. As the sound of the clouds and wind fell, large trees continued to dissolve from the ground for miles around. Bang bang. Inside those houses, big trees pierced out directly, and in an instant, the surrounding miles turned into a forest. And this move is the Hokage world, and the thousand-hand pillar has used the Mudu tree realm in the blood succession limit realm. His principle is to use his chakra as a source of life to launch ninjutsu, and quickly grow multiple trees from the ground. Trees are uprooted, creating a forest in an instant, and all attacks and defenses in the forest are controlled by the caster. But here, Yun Fang does not need to use the skills launched by chakra, but also needs chakra control, only needs to use his brain consciousness. In the face of a moment's effort, the surrounding area turned into a forest, so frightened that the souls of the melon-eating masses on the side were gone. Well, that's awesome. Quote, what is the personality of that young man, since he can turn such a large area into a forest? I have an impression of this young man, he is the teenager who caught the robber some time ago. It's him, it's a little far away, I can't see clearly, is he also a professional hero? Seeing that he is wearing the clothes of the hero department of Shangying High School, he should not be a professional hero, but a student. Students, this student is a monster, so powerful. Quote, everyone, run, if it affects us, we will be in trouble. Yes, let's go. With such a big movement, I believe many professional heroes will rush to this side. Quote, after Yun Fang launched this move, he saw that the surroundings turned into a forest in an instant, and the octopus monster was also a little frightened at this moment. What the hell is going on here? What the hell did this kid do? Quote, isn't this kid's personality something like a body transformation vine? At this moment, the cloud wind was floating with hot steam all over his body, and he gasped for air. At first, when it was used, Yun Fang thought that with his current physical strength, he could not activate it. However, he can barely use it, but in the same way, his physical energy also consumes a lot. After using this move, Yun Fang also roughly knew his current strength. Launching the powerful Mu-Dun ability, so far, he can only barely launch one. However, as for the use of ordinary wooden dun, it can be used at will. Long wait. A smile leaked from Yun Fang's mouth. The octopus monster was stunned for a moment, his face was not as confident as just now, and said, you fool, what the hell are you doing? Quote, of course I did what was good for me. Yun Fang chuckled. finally understand why Abu died at your hands, since he developed his personality to such an extent. And he is such a young man, it is estimated that if Olmet is here, he will also be shocked. Thank you for the compliment, as a reward, I will use all my strength to kill. Yun Fang said. Hearing this, the octopus monster's face leaked a trace of anger. Boy, don't get so carried away, who loses and who wins is still a mystery. The octopus monster said in a deep voice, then turned his gaze to the ugly man and continued. Old Who, do you still want me to deal with this monster alone? The ugly man slowly walked to the octopus monster and said, I know, this guy is too weird, we have to be careful. Quote, come on, make such a big move, I believe that the professional heroes will rush over soon, and then things will be even more troublesome. The octopus monster reasoned. The ugly man nodded, and then the first one went towards Yun Fang. The next moment, Yun Fang directly controlled the big tree with his brain consciousness and shot directly towards the ugly man. Strengthen, the ugly man muttered, and his right arm directly released the change, and slammed a punch towards the oncoming tree. Chapter 11. Snap. Of a sound, the tree rolled directly a few times and then fell heavily into the ground. A slight pain was transmitted from his fist to his cranial nerves. This tree is so hard. This is the ugly man's first reaction. This is already my dominance, you lost. Yun Fang said expressionlessly. The game has just begun, you don't have to be too proud, boy. The ugly man said, and then muttered again. Full body strengthening. With that, he rushed towards Yun Fang again, but much faster than before. Is personality the reinforcement type? Yun Fang said in a deep voice, and then waved his hands. Click, click. Suddenly, the surrounding trees seemed to have spirituality, and they shot towards the ugly man. Drink, drink, drink. The ugly man kept waving his fist in his hand, thus creating an invisible impact force and hitting the tree in front of him. But every time he flew one and the other fell, for a minute, he didn't move forward. Dense sweat gathered on his face, and his mood began to become uneasy. Haven't you been okay? The ugly man roared. Okay, quickly dodge. The octopus monster replied. At this moment, the octopus monster condensed a super large black liquid ball. The edge of the black liquid ball also bubbled with steaming heat, like boiling water. The ugly man laughed, and then quickly dodged. The octopus monster was directly thrown in the direction of Yun Fang. If it is stained by this liquid, Yun Fang is destined to corrode the bones. However, at this moment, Yun Fang leaked a smile. His hands waved again, and thousands of vine-like trees poured out from the ground. The flying black liquid ball is wrapped, but it is very corrosive. So when the big tree wrapped it, it was instantly corroded, and a large white gas spread out in the air. But Yun Fang still didn't mess up, on the contrary, he was exceptionally calm. Thousands of trees were constantly wrapped, and after a while, the black liquid ball was completely consumed. Immediately after, thousands of large trees formed a super large tree. Since it's all blocked by this tree, the octopus monster leaked a hideous look and cursed. What to do now? Even if my enhancement can increase the power, it is not enough to match the amount of wood. The ugly man said. The professional hero is about to arrive, let's go first. Octopus Strange. Okay. Saying that, the octopus monster and the ugly man quickly turned around and wanted to escape. However, Yun Fang may give him a chance to escape. It had been turned into a forest for miles, and they had fled. Yun Fang waved his hands again, and the surrounding trees began to spread, enveloping the two of them in it, forming a super large wooden ball. The next moment, there was a boom sound, and it was clear that they were struggling inside, trying to break these trees and escape. However, it was obviously unlikely, because every time he tapped, the trees would fuse together again, increasing the thickness. After a continuous knock for a while, the speed of the punches inside slowed down significantly. Yun Fang walked in front of this big wooden ball, controlling the wooden ball, and began to shrink. The next moment, the speed of the punches inside began to speed up again. As the ball shrank smaller and smaller, after a moment, there was no sound inside. Open. The clouds and wind were silent. Then the ball opens. The octopus monster has been seriously injured by the ugly man, especially the ugly man has just been trapped, and he constantly uses reinforcement to knock. At this moment, his hands were no longer intuitive. The two of them blocked the ground, and Ben had already prepared for death, but he did not expect that the wooden ball suddenly opened. They stood up with difficulty. Yun Fang's right arm turned into a sharp wooden thorn. Step by step, we approached them. Sweat beads appeared on the faces of the octopus monster and the ugly man again, and their hearts began to fear. I can't imagine that since we will plant it on your hands. Yun Fang suddenly leaked a smile, and his hand changed back to its original appearance. Just when they felt strange, their vision suddenly dimmed, and a white object appeared on their bodies. What's going on here? Quote, why, what did this kid do? Quote, this is the result I'm waiting for. Yun Fang directly stretched out his arm, grabbed the white object, and immediately pulled it. However, Yun Fang did not exhaust their lifespan, only 95% of their lifespan. The reason for doing this is that it is his reason. Soon, Yun Fang absorbed the white object, and immediately disarmed the ability of the soul fruit. After they were stripped of their lives, they fainted, but they also lived for a short time, and soon after, they had to face death. Disarm, Yun Fang muttered. The next moment, the surrounding trees directly turned into green points of light and disappeared. Ha, ha, ha. At this moment, a man whose whole body was basically wrapped in flames descended from him. Bang, fell to the ground. And his name is Andwa, also called Boom Yancy, is the second-ranked hero and the father of Boom Frost. He has a personality that manipulates flames, and his personality is called Hell Flame, which is called the strongest personality of the fire system. Excessive use of personality can lead to an increase in body temperature and a decrease in physical function. Yun Fang had seen him in the hero ranking on the computer before, so he knew that the man in front of him was not him. Andrew looked at Yun Fang with a serious face, and then looked at the other two octopus monsters who fell to the ground, as well as the ugly man. This is what you knocked down? Andeva asked. Yun Fang nodded and said, when I came home from school, these two strange men suddenly attacked me, and I had no choice but to knock him to the ground. Quote, after school, Andwa took a closer look at the school uniform on Yun Fang's body, and then continued, you are Shangying High School's hero department. Quote, yes, today is the first day of school. Cloud Wind Channel. After Andeva heard Yun Fang's words, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and a weird smile leaked out. You kid, it's terrible, since a student who went to the hero department of Shangying High School on the first day, since he knocked down two hero killers. Hero killer. Yun Fang was stunned for a moment, then quickly spoke again, I'm also a little lucky. Quote, it's not something that can be done with luck, you have to have strength. Andwa was also very surprised at the moment, two heroic killers who were not weak, since they were knocked down by a student. When I came here just now, I saw a lot of trees, is that your personality? Andeva continued to ask. Yun Fang nodded and said, my personality can't be completely controlled yet, and I released a lot of trees as soon as I got excited. Quote, this kid, is it a monster? Andwa thought to himself. Your personality is very strong, and when you have complete control, I believe that you will exist like Olmec. Andwa said in a deep voice. I accept your compliment. Yun Fang smiled slightly. At this moment, there was a slight vibration on the ground. Immediately after, a giantess appeared, and this giantess was the mountain woman, and on the other side, dense forest Shenwei also rushed over. The two of them are partners, and it is normal for them to appear at the same time. When dense forest Shenwei saw that Yun Fang was also present, he was obviously a little surprised, but it did not show on his face. He smiled at Andawa. I said, why didn't it move? It turned out that the hero Andwa defeated. Quote, Andwa glanced at it expressionlessly, and then said in a deep voice, you have to misunderstand, it was not me Andwa who defeated, but this boy next to you. Quote, dense forest Shenwei's heart suddenly touched, and he cast an incredible look towards Yun Fang. Hello, we're calling noodles again. Yun Fang said calmly. You, good, dense forest Shenwei replied politely. After Andeva saw that there was nothing to do with him, he left silently, but he will always remember what happened just now. What a surprise. I didn't expect you to beat them. Dense forest Shenwei teased with a smile. The mountain lady also came to the side, and asked the dense forest Shenwei suspiciously, you guys know each other? Quote, there is a side to it. Right, Merlot Cloudwind. Quote, when dense forest Shenwei last read his name, he obviously read it a little louder. His purpose was just to tell the mountain woman. The young man in front of her was the same man he had asked her to inquire about last time. Yun Fang chuckled. Well, it can be considered so. If there is nothing else, I will leave first and not disturb you guys. Quote. Dense Forest Shinwei. You defeated this heroic killer. Don't you want to go with me to receive the reward? Quote. Block the meeting gift and give it to you. Yun Fang said calmly. Dense Forest Shinwei hesitated for a moment and said, okay. I'll just thank you here in advance. Quote. Yun Fang smiled slightly, and then stepped away. When Yun Fang's back completely disappeared from their sight, Dense Forest Shinwei said, is this guy ridiculously strong? Quote. Last time I read his profile, his personality can breathe fire, but there is no trace of fire around. Is this really defeated by him, not by Aizawa? The mountain woman said slowly. Dense Forest Shinwei smiled slightly and replied, but have you forgotten that Aizawa's personality is Hell Flame? If he defeated it, then why is there no trace of fire around? Quote. It's not like Aizawa can give credit to a little imp he never knew. Hearing the analysis of the dense forest divine power, the mountain woman pondered for a while and spoke. Then there are no traces of burning around. Could it be that it was neither Aizawa nor Merlot Yun Fang who defeated these two heroic killers? What did we see when we came? Dense Forest Kamui asked. The mountain woman seemed to understand something, and quickly said, yes, when we first came, this place turned into a forest. Quote. But when we were almost here, the forest disappeared. Sure enough, I guessed correctly, it was neither Aizawa nor Merlot Yun Fang who defeated these two heroic killers. It is a mysterious person with a personality similar to your dense forest divine power. Quote. The dense forest god Wei was suddenly speechless and explained, if I secretly don't know something, I might believe your reasoning. Quote. The mountain woman was stunned and wondered, what do you mean? Quote. Merlot Yun Fang's personality may be fire-breathing, but he also has a personality similar to mine. On the last time, according to the crowd at the time, his arm could turn into a tree to spread. Mibayashi Kamui explained. You mean, he has two personalities? The mountain woman looked at the dense forest Shinwei with wide eyes, expecting his answer. No, I'm guessing he should have three personalities. Dense forest Shinwei said in a deep voice. Three, you're not kidding me, are you? The mountain woman said half convinced. Of course, this is just my guess, but I believe that time will tell that the forest just now, if I guessed correctly, should have been made by him. Saying that, the dense forest Shinwei slowly walked towards the two heroic killers lying underground. If that's the case, his personality is too strong, since he can launch such a large scale. The mountain woman swallowed hard. Yes, it's a monster-like existence. While responding to the mountain woman, dense forest Kamui used his personality to list these two heroic killers. Come and help, bring them back. Dense forest Kamui continued. The mountain woman nodded, and then reached out and grabbed the two heroic killers in her hands. I hope he has his own goals in the future. Don't go crooked, otherwise the threat to us is really too great. Dense Forest Shinwei said slowly. After Yun Fang went back, after dinner, he rested early, and used the tree realm birth for the first time, consuming too much of his physical energy. The next morning, he went to the hero department of Shangying High School as usual. The curriculum of hero subjects in Shangying High School is a compulsory subject in the morning, and general courses such as English. At noon, you can enjoy first-class food at a low price in the large cafeteria. When Yun Fang came to the school, he also heard them talking about yesterday's events, but they didn't know the reason. Because after the dense forest Kamui brought the hero killer back to the police station, Olmet was also there at that time. The plan proposed by Olmet is to let Yun Fang disassociate himself from this matter, otherwise it will have a great impact on him. All of the above decided to block the inside story of this matter, and then fake that it was defeated by the partner of dense forest Kamui. Let the impact of his cloud wind be minimized, allowing him to stay in the hero department with peace of mind. Yun Fang is not releasing the wood spirit this time, but will be placed in the body and can be summoned when needed. Afternoon. Yun Fang sat in the last row, so sleepy that his eyes were almost unable to open. The ordinary course of this world, it was almost boring for him when he didn't cross. Hypnosis can compete with the original Yun Fang's head teacher. Tread. At this moment, the sound of stepping footsteps came from the corridor outside the classroom door. With a, "I'm coming," sound, the classroom door was suddenly pulled open. Olmec grabbed the deadbolt with both hands, and then said, "Enter through the door through a very ordinary one." Quote. Saying that, his whole body leaned in, leaking a smile after a smile. The next moment, the class began to boil, and their eyes flashed with expectation. Yun Fang was shouted by him like this, but he sobered up a lot. "It's Olmec. It's so powerful, it turns out that he is really a teacher. That's the clothes of the Silver Age." Olmec walked to the podium step by step in slow motion, and the action was very exaggerated. After arriving at the podium, Olmec said with his hands crossed at his waist and a smile on his face, "The course I'm in charge of is Hero Fundamentals, which is a course that is trained to build a hero foundation. The credits are also the most. Without further ado, today is it, combat training," Olmec said while making a strange pose. The people below the podium heard Olmec say that he wanted to train in battle, and immediately began to boil. "Fight, ha ha ha." Bakugao Shungji leaked an expectant expression. "And with that comes this, look over here." Olmec pointed to the right. Moisture. On the right, a row of combat uniforms slowly spit out. These combat uniforms were customized for submitting personality reports and needs before enrollment. Yun Fang submitted the personality of Spitfire at that time, but changed it later. It is simple, wear resistant, tough, and there is no other use. After taking your own battle, go to Playground B in turn, Olmec said. Playground B. After changing into combat uniforms, Yun Fang followed them to Playground B. Their combat uniforms, Yun Fang was really powerless to complain. Some wear armor warriors, some wear something similar to Batman. Wait a minute. There are a few that Yun Fang feels more normal. When they walked out of the exit, Olmec had already waited for them. It's also important to start dressing up. Young girls, from today onwards, you must have the consciousness of being heroes. Not bad, everyone is very handsome. Olmec glanced at the poop, then chuckled. Immediately, Olmec led everyone into the simulation field. Okay, it's time for combat training. Let me start with a rule for you. Quote. The setting is that the enemy hides nuclear weapons somewhere in the stronghold, and the hero has to move forward to eliminate this threat. The hero needs to catch the enemy within the time limit, or successfully recover the nuclear weapon, and the enemy needs to protect the nuclear weapon within the time limit, or capture the hero. Saying that, Olmec took out a box and continued. The partner and the opponent are all decided by drawing lots. Let's get started now. Quote. After all the lots, Yun Fang opened the small note, which had an A written in it, and the next moment, he subconsciously raised his head and scanned towards them. See who is like yourself in A. Is there anyone like me who is in Group A? Yun Fang asked. I'm Group F. I'm Group B. Me. As the last voice fell, 8 million Bai approached Yun Fang's side and continued, I am from Group A. Quote. Yun Fang nodded and asked, what personality are you? Quote. Create. What about you? 8 million replied. Me. Yun Fang pondered for a while and replied, the body becomes woody. Quote. Wood. When everyone heard what Yun Fang said, they subconsciously followed. What a strange personality. Wood. Ha 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 ha. Some people didn't hold back and laughed directly. However, Olmec's face showed solemnity. The next moment, Olmec put his hands into the boxes of different colors. The first battle is between these two groups. With that, he took out a ball with one hand. A and E group. A group is the enemy, E group is the hero. Others go to the monitoring room first. Olmec shouted. Yes, everyone replied. The people in Group E are boom-scorched, as well as Aoyama Grace. Yun Fang and 8 million hundred walked up to the roof, and after a while, they went up to the mock nuclear weapon. The personalities of the two of us don't match, and it's difficult to match. 8 million hundred spoke. Yun Fang nodded in agreement. Don't care, come and help. 8 million hundred said towards Yun Fang. Yun Fang walked to her side with a puzzled look and asked, how to help? Quote. I saw that on the 8 million hundred arms, colored light particles appeared, and the next moment, a pile of iron appeared in Yun Fang's line of sight. And this operation, Yun Fang was slightly surprised. Don't be stunned, block this door. 8 million hundred said. Yun Fang snorted, and then took the 8 million hundred pieces of created iron and blocked the door. After a while, they blocked the only entrance. And then, Yun Fang asked. Adapt, 8,000,000 ways. All right, Yun Fang said, and then sat down on the black iron bucket on the other side. And 8,000,000 is more diligent. She created a few more things that looked exactly like simulated nuclear weapons and put them aside. Including one really, there are 6. When she was done, she wiped the sweat from her cheeks. Then his gaze turned to Yun Fang and said, Hey, don't you sit so comfortably, okay, we're training. Quote. Yun Fang chuckled, I don't think I can help this either, so I have to sit here, afraid that it will hinder you. Quote. 8,000,000 white glances at Yun Fang, a serious nonsense, since the face does not change color. Alas, she sighed, in her eyes, Yun Fang could not be relied on, she could only rely on herself. Suddenly, at this moment, on the ground, a layer of cold ice quickly covered the entire building. Before 8,000,000 could react, her feet were directly frozen by the ice. This personality is, 8,000,000 had a hint of bad foreboding on his face. She cast her gaze on Yun Fang's body, and felt slightly surprised that Yun Fang was not frozen. Tread. At this moment, there was a sound of heavy footsteps outside the door. Immediately followed by a boom. Even if the gate of defense was added, it was directly broken by the cold ice. Yun Fang chuckled. Partner, your thickened defensive door doesn't have much effect. Quote. 8,000,000 gritted his teeth and said, Of course I know, but is it time to say this? Hurry up and find a way to stop him. Quote. You can't stop me, Boom said calmly. On his face, confidence appeared. Monitoring room. In the monitoring room at this time, except for Olmet's face, which did not change much, everyone else was stunned. This powerful slag. The enemy group doesn't seem to be able to fight back at all. It seems that the hero group has won steadily. What kind of perverted personality is this? Worthy of being an escort to school. When Bakugao Shungji saw this scene, his face became solemn. Young girls, the enemy group is also very powerful. Olmet chuckled. Now in this situation, the only one who can fight is the one who says that the whole body can turn into wood. Well, I also feel that the enemy group win rate is very low. At this time, except for Olmet who knew a little about Yun Fang, only Iida Tenya knew about Yun Fang's horror. Olmet didn't speak, he stared intently at the screen in front of him. Come on, Boom Frost is also ready for battle at this moment. Be careful, he has a strong personality. 8,000,000 instructed from the sidelines. Yun Fang leaked a smile and replied, It's okay, I remember that as long as we catch the 2 of them, even if we win. Quote. Catch. 8,000,000 Bailong paused for a moment, and then hurriedly said, You still hold on to the nuclear weapons, as long as you are not caught by him within the specified time, and the nuclear weapons are not recovered by him, we still have a chance. Quote. I'd better pull you out first, and you can keep it yourself. Yun Fang calmly walked towards the 8,000,000 with steps. Boom's brows frowned. From the moment he entered the door, Yun Fang and 8,000,000 had not paid attention to him. The blue gas emitted from the scorched frozen hand and then touched the wall, and the next moment, a layer of even larger cold ice struck again. Be careful, 8,000,000 shouted loudly, and immediately after, she did not dare to open her eyes to see. Okay. As a voice sounded, 8,000,000 slowly opened his eyes, but there was a black in front of him. What's going on? She asked in surprise. You're inside my protective ball right now. I've helped you get rid of the ice that is trapping your feet. Yun Fang said with a smile. As Yun Fang's voice fell, suddenly, this protective ball made of wooden dun opened to both sides. 8,000,000's gaze returned to normal, and she looked at Yun Fang with a surprised look and said, Didn't you say that your personality is that your whole body turns into wood or something? Quote. I'm using an analogy. Like, 8,000,000 was speechless, paused for a while, and then continued, What should I do now? Quote. Look at the nuclear weapons, I try not to let him go further. Cloud Wind Channel. Do you need weapons to assist? 8,000,000 continued to ask. Yun Fang shook his head, and then said, No need. Quote. 8,000,000 nodded, and then began to take 5 to 6 steps back, standing in front of real and fake nuclear weapons. Yun Fang turned around, looked at 8,000,000 in one glance, and then danced his hands upward, booming. On the ground, countless large trees rose from the ground. They fused together to form a thick wall. Seeing this scene, 8 million Bai couldn't help frowning, and muttered, "This guy, obviously has such a strong personality, but he put on a more anxious appearance than me before." Seeing this scene, he was also slightly surprised. Indeed, just now, he underestimated Yun Fang. He thought he could easily win in one training session, but the results were endless. "This training, I will do my best to win," Boom said in a deep voice. Yun Fang chuckled. "However, with me, I won't let you pass through this wooden wall." Quote, "Sorry, the next attack is likely to cause you some damage, but I can't help it," Boom said expressionlessly. After saying that, blue gas appeared on his hand again, followed by a loud gulp. Ah! A row of ice thorns stabbed directly towards Yun Fang, who took a step back and quickly stretched out his fist with both hands. "Is this guy crazy and trying to hit my ice thorn with his fist?" Seeing Yun Fang's action, Bang Jiao was shocked. "This is simply crazy. Hit the ice thorn with your fist, and the light hand will be seriously injured, and the heavy hand will be destroyed." Yun Fang's punches were fast, even faster than their eyes, so that their hands saw dozens of pairs of hands constantly bombarding the ice thorn. Bang, bang, bang. Quote, "The debris of the ice thorn continued to fall to the ground, and in a few seconds, the ice thorns created by the scorching froze were all blasted into debris by the cloud wind." When Yun Fang's attack stopped, he was stunned, and his eyes quickly looked towards his hands. But Yun Fang's hands were not scarred. "This kid, does the hardness of the fist completely surpass the ice thorn created?" Boom Jiao Jia muttered. On the other side of the wooden wall, 8 million people who heard a lot of movement asked worriedly, "Are you all right?" "Don't worry, you are responsible for lying down," Yun Fang replied. 8 million hundred. Judging from the attack that had just been launched, Yun Fang could roughly guess that his strength was above him. "Change me," Yun Fang shouted, flicked his hands, and an oversized vine pierced directly from the floor and directly pierced Booming Jiao. Boom Frost quickly dodged, but the vine kept running after him. Bang, bang, bang. The wall was constantly knocked down by the vines of the cloud wind, and the whole building began to shake, crumbling, and seemed to fall at any moment. Ah! Seeing that this was not good, he shouted again, and activated his semi-cold personality to directly freeze the large vine flying towards him. Phew! Half of his body was covered in cold ice, and his mouth exhaled a cold breath. Before he could even take a breath of air, Yun Fang came to him with a fist and directly bombarded him with a punch. Bang! Boom! Scorched freeze fell directly from the window. Monitoring room. Looking at the students on the screen at this moment, everyone was stunned, and their jaws slowly dropped. They previously thought that Bang Scorched Frozen was the boss, but they didn't expect that the boss turned out to be the wooden personality they just looked down on. "Well, it's terrible." Quote, "These two are monsters." Shin, "Well, I'm not in a group against them." Quote, "It feels scarier than Xiao Sheng." Midoriya Izuku's teeth began to fight at this moment. On the other side, the boss, who was overwhelmed with his eyes wide open, gritted his teeth fiercely. At this moment, he really wanted to go up and fight one of the two people, Bang Jiao or Yun Fang. "Young man, you really surprised me." There was also a hint of excitement in Olmet's eyes. Whoops! At the moment when he fell downstairs, he quickly made an ice ladder, and the whole person slipped down. And below, Qingshan Elegant looked directly dumbfounded, looking at the scorched freeze with a blank face. At the beginning, Bang Jiao thought that he could do it alone, so he called Aoyama Grace to wait for him outside. "What happened?" Aoyama asked gracefully. Aoyama is elegant. His personality is Neville Laser. A laser shot from the navel has a strong penetrating power and can also be used to propel itself in the opposite direction. But if you fire for more than a second, you will damage your stomach. "Something unexpected happened to me," Boom said in a deep voice. "Need my help?" Aoyama asked with a smile. Boom Jiao nodded, and then added, "Little one, that guy, hide deeply." Quote, Aoyama touched his navel gracefully and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I am still very confident in my personality." Quote, Boom Jiao frowned and instructed, "Don't say it so confidently first, otherwise you will suffer a loss." Quote, it's okay. Aoyama waved his hand gracefully. Speechless, he continued, "Time is running out, let's go separate ways. You are responsible for recovering nuclear weapons, and I am dragging the front." Quote, No problem. Aoyama smiled gracefully. Zig. In the middle of the wooden wall, a hole suddenly opened, and 8,000,000 moments of nervous tension. But when he saw that it was a familiar figure, the stone stuck in her heart fell. You, how did you come in and catch him? 8,000,000 asked suspiciously. Yun Fang shook his head and said with a smile, no, I knocked him away. Quote. Flying. 8,000,000 Bailong paused for a moment, and then quickly said, this is training, you won't really knock him away. Quote. It's true that flying is true, but he is fine, otherwise the training would have been over long ago. Yun Fang reasoned. Alright, so what do we do now? 8,000,000 asked. What should I do? Yun Fang pondered for a while and continued. The rule is that they recycle nuclear weapons, or in other words, catch the two of us and count them as winning. Quote. 8,000,000 Bai nodded and asked suspiciously, and then? Quote. And then, we just get the nuclear weapons where they need a certain amount of time, and we stop one by one, wait for the time to come, and we win. Quote. Another is, catch them, you catch one, I catch one, so it saves more time. I know this, but where are the nuclear weapons hidden? 8,000,000 asked. When Olmec said the rules, he did not say that nuclear weapons cannot be moved, nor did he say that nuclear weapons must be placed on this floor. Yun Fang said slowly. So where are you going to put it? 8,000,000 asked. Yun Fang slowly raised his hand and pointed to the ceiling, put it on top of this building. Quote. 8,000,001 puzzled faces. Okay, no more ado, you stand behind me. Yun Fang said softly. Although he didn't understand what Yun Fang was going to do, 8,000,000 still walked behind Yun Fang. Yun Fang waved his hands and immediately said, up. Quote. On the floor, hundreds of small branches poured out from the ground and wrapped around the bodies of 6 nuclear weapons. The next moment, the small branches grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, hundreds of them merged together, and spread towards the sky, when they reached a certain height. It finally stopped. Monitoring room. Old teacher, is this a foul? Kaminari asked. Yes, he put nuclear weapons in the air. Olmec shook his head and said, young man, this is not a foul, because the rules do not say that it cannot be placed in the middle of the sky on the roof. Quote. So powerful, is he also escort? Frog blowing plum rain asked towards Olmec. No, I saw him during the entrance test. Riri Mikako replied. Well, yes, this girl is right, he is not an escort. Olmec replied. Bakugao Shungji stared at the screen in front of him, his eyes were wide open, and even the bloodshot of his eyeballs appeared a lot. At this moment, his heart is very entangled, and his goal ideal is beyond Olmec's. Bakugao Shungji did not expect that a person who was not very conspicuous in the original was so powerful in personality. He really wanted to run over to fight Yun Fang right away now and divide the victory and defeat. Tread. Once again, he came to the last floor, the moment he entered the door. He was stunned, and at this moment the ceiling was directly poked out of a big hole by a big tree. He looked up slightly, looked at the dense leaves at the top of the tree, and swallowed. Has this guy's personality developed to this extent? Boom Frost said. Give this man to me, and the other one to you. Yun Fang said towards 8,000,000. 8,000,000 nodded and agreed. Yun Fang said, took a few steps forward, and said towards Bang Jiao, the old rule, with me, you can't pass. Quote. Boom Jiao frowned. If it was just beginning, he would definitely refute it, but, at this moment, he knew that Yun Fang had this strength. Boom Frost slowly raised his hand, blue light appeared on his fingertips, and then he aimed in the direction of Yun Fang and began to release cold ice. This time, he did not retain his strength as he did the previous time, but released all his strength. Yun Fang danced his hands. In front of him, the wooden wall rose rapidly. Bang bang. The cold ice directly broke through the wooden wall, and Yun Fang quickly dodged to the right, and finally the cold ice directly hit the huge tree, but the big tree did not move. Only the edge was knocked away, and in the blink of an eye, the tree returned to its original appearance. Seeing that the cloud wind dodged, Bang Scorched quickly launched a second round of cold ice. Only after this time, his right side was also covered with a thin layer of cold ice. Immediately after, a large breath of cold breath came out of his mouth. The personality of Bang Scorched is half cold and half burning, and the right side of the body can create cold air, and the left side can create flames. The range of influence and temperature are unknown, which can instantly freeze the entire building, and can also disable a large number of enemies with one blow, and the strength is very strong. But the disadvantage is that it is impossible to use only the same ability for a long time, otherwise frostbite or burns will result. His personality needs to be half-cold auxiliary half-burn, and half-burning auxiliary half-cold, so that the full strength of his personality can be brought into play. However, Boon Zhao is reluctant to use the power of half-burn, but the reason is that he was cultivated by his father as a tool to surpass Olmec since he was a child, and his mother was bullied and cried for many years. So he is reluctant to use the burning ability on behalf of his father. If I go on like this, it will cause damage to the right side of my body. But if you don't use it, there is no hope for this combat training. Boom thought to himself. Now at this moment, he is in a tangle, and the only thing that can ignite hope is to use the burning ability of his left body. He gritted his teeth, but still gave up the ability to use burning. And at this time, behind the cloud wind, with a boom, a hole was suddenly opened in the wall. Yun Fang subconsciously looked back. Tread. Aoyama walked in gracefully, but when he saw this scene inside, he was immediately stunned. What the hell is going on here? Quote, why is there a big tree here? Aoyama said suspiciously. Now Aoyama Elegance was unaware, and he came up ready to cut in from behind, although he felt a great vibration in the building on the way. However, he simply thought it was caused by fighting. It seems that he came by himself, and he didn't bother you to look for it. You catch him first, my side is also fast. Yun Fang shouted towards 8 million hundreds. 8 million hundred nodded. The next moment, Yun Fang set his eyes on Booming Frost again. Now Bang Jiao Jiao pinned the only glimmer of hope on Aoyama's elegant body, as long as he defeated 8 million hundred. And he dragged Yun Fang, and then, Aoyama Elegant can go to recover nuclear weapons, which is the most effective method. Drink. Once again, Boom Frost launched an ice attack. Thick ice rushed towards the clouds and winds. Yun Fang quickly made a tough wooden wall. Boom. Of a sound. The cloud wind pressed against the wooden wall, and Bang Scorched Frost constantly released the power of cold ice, and with it, Boom Scorched right body. Originally just covering a thin layer of ice, it is now slowly thickening. Woo-hoo-hoo. He began to breathe rapidly, and the hot air in his mouth was gulping out. Click. Click. The building began to crack, and the next moment it swayed. Monitoring room. Teacher, it's really dangerous to go on like this. If you continue to fight like this, the whole building will collapse. Olmec frowned, and then shouted into the walkie-talkie, both sides terminate. Quote. As this sound sounded, the cloud wind sighed, and which side of the scorched freeze instantly froze. Then stop the attack. 8 million hundred and Qingshan's elegant and tense mood finally relaxed. If Yun Fang and the two of them continued to fight like this, the building is bound to collapse, and they will be implicated at the time. Snap. Aoyama sat directly on the ground, and his whole body was still shaking. It's terrible, he said in a hushed voice. Before, Aoyama thought that he could help a little, but at this moment, he felt that he was superfluous. These two people are simply powerful like monsters. 8 million hundred muttered. The scorched right side of his body was already covered with thick ice, and it was not until the moment he stopped, the cold ice of his body did not continue to thicken. Moisture. The next moment, his body came out of heat, and the cold ice covering his body slowly turned into hot water, and it fell low to the ground. And Yun Fang also retracted all the surrounding wooden walls, as well as the huge trees of this lesson. 6 nuclear weapons also fell to the ground. It's a pity to terminate, Ben still wants to compete with you. Yun Fang said with a smile. Even if we don't stop, we will definitely lose, your personality is stronger than mine. Boom said softly. I'm looking forward to my next duel with you. Yun Fang smiled at Boom Frost. Boom froze for a moment, and then politely returned Yun Fang with a smile. Next time, I will use all my strength. Quote. Tread. 8 million Bai slowly walked to Yun Fang, crossed his hands over his chest, and said, you know, this building is almost destroyed by you. Quote. I'm sorry. Boom Zhao said quickly. Yun Fang, on the other hand, chuckled on the side. At this time, in the monitoring room, the corners of Bakugao Shengji's mouth were trembling as he looked at the screen. These two guys. Quote. At this moment, Bakugao Shungji also deeply realized that now he was not Yun Fang and Bakugao Shungji's opponent at all. In the first training, the scorching freeze threw in the towel, which was considered a victory for the enemy group, and the second game immediately began again. Bakugao Shungji is a hero group, and in order to show that he and Yun Fang have scorched their strength, there is not too much difference. The entire building was blown up directly, and in the end, the enemy group was victorious. After the training was over, Yun Fang and they came to the place where they had just gathered. Olmec was still as always with his hands crossed at the waist, leaking that pompous smile. Everyone worked hard, except for a few people who suffered a little injury, everything else is fine. For the first training, everyone did a really good job, Olmec said. Another thing to note is that the scorched boy, the Merlot Yun Fang boy, if I don't terminate the competition for the two of you, a building will be demolished for you. Also exploded the heroic victory over his own teenager. You are even more outrageous, directly blasted a building, you three need to pay attention to a little, you can't mess up like this in the future. In the face of Olmec's admonition, Yun Fang nodded, while Bakugao Shungji looked disdainful. All in all three of you are doing well, and the others are not bad. Speaking of the back, Olmec did not forget to praise others. This is the end of today's training, you guys change your clothes and go back to the classroom. Olmec ordered, and then left. After Olmec left, a group of people gathered in front of Yun Fang and said excitedly, "Seeing your battle, I feel super hot. Because you fought like that on the first stop, we all cheered up. Your personality is so powerful, I look stupid." Listening to their words, Yun Fang looked at them with a confused expression. Then they all introduced themselves again. All the names were very strange. After they introduced a bowel, Yun Fang basically left ear in, right ear out. Not a single one is remembered. I, Merlot Yun Fang, will give more advice in the future. Yun Fang smiled slightly. After chatting about useless topics, they returned to the classroom. After Yun Fang went back, he was too bored and slept directly on the table. There was no teacher coming in the back, so Yun Fang slept until school. "Hey, are you planning to spend the night here tonight?" 8,000,000 turned around and said towards Yun Fang behind him. Yun Fang opened his hands in confusion, rubbed them with them, and scanned the already empty classroom. "Is school out so soon?" Saying that, he subconsciously picked up his school bag and carried it on his back, yawned and walked outside. Wait, 8,000,000 people picked up their bags and caught up. Yun Fang stopped his steps, looked at the 8,000,000 godlessly and said, "Are you looking for me?" Quote. 8,000,000 nodded. "You say, I'm in a hurry." Yun Fang stretched. 8,000,000 Bai took out his mobile phone in his trouser pocket, clicked a few times on the screen, and then made a photo and showed it to Yun Fang. "You should have heard about it, the hero killer incident yesterday afternoon. The image in this image is of a forest, but some trees grow from stones and buildings. It was obvious that Yun Fang used the tree realm birth to make it like this yesterday afternoon. However, the text accompanying the picture is that of the hero dense forest Kamui, showing a super powerful personality." "Well, I heard, what's wrong?" Yun Fang asked rhetorically. "No, I just want to ask, this should be your personality, right?" 8,000,000 temptations. "Why do you say that? If I hadn't seen you unleash your personality today, I wouldn't have had any doubts, but after looking at your personality, I found that it was very similar to the personality you showed today." 8,000,000 said slowly. Yun Fang chuckled. "Didn't you see the matching words in the picture? The hero jungle Kamui shows off a super powerful personality." Quote. "I know, I'm just curious to ask." 8,000,000 replied. "Anything else? I'll go first, it's okay." Yun Fang asked. "It's really not you." 8,000,000 Immortal asked again. "You guess." Yun Fang said 2 words before turning and leaving. 8,000,000 people looked at Yun Fang's back in amazement and put the phone back in his pocket. Out of Shangying High School, Yun Fang was preparing to go home, but at this moment, a loud voice sounded. "Merlot Cloud Wind." Yun Fang subconsciously overlooked, and at this time Iida Tenya ran over in small steps. "How, you want to run over and be nosy again?" Yun Fang sneered. Iida Tenya quickly shook his head and bowed towards Yun Fang. "I deeply feel wrong about what I did before, I'm sorry." Quote. Yun Fang looked at Iida Tenya speechlessly. Just today, Iida Tenya thought a lot, and he thought that maybe he was really too nosy. Therefore, At this moment, he came to apologize to Yun Fang. Seeing that Yun Fang did not speak, Iida Tenya said again, "Sorry, I was nosy before." Quote. Yun Fang glanced at him, did not speak, and directly turned and left. Of course, Iida Tenya knew Yun Fang's personality, so he didn't chase after him to ask for forgiveness, otherwise, it was possible to be killed. This kind of high-risk thing, he dare not mess around. In his eyes, Yun Fang did not directly tell him to roll, which means that he can still be friends with Yun Fang in the future. The next day, the news that Olmut was appointed as a teacher shocked the whole country, and the media flocked to it in the past few days, setting off a great sensation. Yun Fang came to Xiangyang High School as usual, but the next moment, a group of reporters directly blocked in front of Yun Fang. Dozens of flower tubes were placed directly to his mouth, and more than a dozen cameras were already pointed at him. "Classmate, excuse me, how does Olmut take the class?" a female reporter asked. Yun Fang frowned. Whether it was before or after crossing, he hated reporters. "Can you go aside?" Yun Fang said in a deep voice. "Classmate, just say a word, just a sentence." The female reporter continued to ask. "So if you want to know, you will know if you go up and see it yourself." Yun Fang left directly Yao Dao. The female reporter wanted to continue to catch up, but I don't know who shouted a word later. "There are students in the back." The female reporter gave up her interview with Yun Fang and targeted others. "I don't know if it's because of yesterday's training or something else. Who is willing?" Yun Fang was very puzzled. He didn't remember that his relationship with 8,000,000 was so good. "I came early in the morning and talked to myself a lot about a lot of topics." It wasn't until Aizawa came to the classroom that she quieted down. Aizawa is still sloppy and his eyes are blank. "Yesterday's combat training. Hard work for you. I have already seen the VTR and the results. Bakugao, next time you train indoors, pay attention to it, don't blow up a building again. There are also clouds and winds and scorching freeze. If Olmut hadn't terminated the battle, you two would probably have demolished that building like Bakugao." "I see. Cloud wind, Bakugao victory over himself, and Boom Frost return. However, I am quite satisfied, because it proves that your personality is very strong." Aizawa continued. "Okay, that's it. Next, let's get to the topic of today's class meeting, and today I want you to decide on the personnel of the school-level committee." As soon as Aizawa's voice fell, the students below directly boiled and raised their hands one after another. "I want to be the squad leader, let me come." "Me too. I want to be too. This position exists for me." Yun Fang looked at them and sighed. He really didn't understand why everyone still wanted to be the squad leader to do so many things. Anyway, he was just not interested in the squad leader. "Silence," Aizawa shouted, and then said, "You guys vote and decide." Quote. "This attention is good." Everyone agreed. Aizawa took out his sleeping bag, walked in, and the next moment zipped it, while instructing, "Then you choose slowly, just decide in this lesson." Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, he fell straight down. After a while, they each prepared a piece of paper with a note on who they wanted to vote for, which was finally checked by Aizawa and written on the blackboard. Yun Fang got the paper, wrote 18,000,000 and handed it in, and then he fell asleep on the table. Because Yun Fang felt that there was no matter of his own below, as for who was the squad leader, he felt that it didn't matter. "Anyway, it doesn't have much to do with myself. Many people are struggling to vote for themselves or for others." After more than 10 or 20 minutes of consideration, finally everyone's tickets were handed in, and Aizawa was in charge of the final project, check. On the blackboard, the names of all the people in the class were written, and as for the tickets of the students, he also sorted them out. Then I wrote it on the blackboard. The number of votes is first, 8,000,002 votes, followed by the second, Yun Fang 2 votes, Midoriya Izuku 2 votes, the rest of the people are either 1 vote, and there are 0 votes. The three of you will discuss it yourself and tell me the result. Finally, Aizawa got into his sleeping bag again and lay down. Why would someone stink for a long time? Who is it? Bakugao Shungji looked hideous and shouted. "I just know it's better than voting for you." The man next to Bakugao Katsuki laughed. Bakugao Shungji turned his head and said viciously, "What do you say, fool?" Watching them arguing, 8,000,000 shook his head helplessly, and then he turned his head and was ready to say something to Yun Fang, but at this moment, Yun Fang slept sweetly. Is this guy here to sleep? 8,000,000 muttered. She raised her hand and tapped lightly on the desk a few times, while whispering, "Hey, Yun Fang, wake up." Quote. After hearing the movement, Yun Fang raised his head and opened his eyes, and subconsciously said, "Is class over?" Quote. 8,000,001 looked at Yun Fang speechlessly, sighed, and then said, "After thinking too much, we are still deciding who will be the squad leader." Quote. Yun Fang was slightly helpless, yawning and said, "You have found the wrong person, this matter has nothing to do with me at all." Quote. 8,000,001 speechless, stretched out his finger to the blackboard, and continued, "Choosing the class president to vote for you and me and Midoriya are 2 votes, and the teacher let us discuss by ourselves." Quote. Yun Fang was stunned, looked at the blackboard, and sure enough, on the blackboard, it was indeed written Yun Fang 2 votes. Yun Fang frowned, and said in his heart, "That fool voted for me and wanted to pull me into the water." Quote. Looking at Yun Fang's expression, 8,000,001 was a little puzzled, seeing that he had 2 votes, he could have the qualifications to choose the squad leader, he should show a happy expression. But showing a dead fish face, what is this operation? In fact, Yun Fang's 2 votes, one was cast by Tenya Iida, and the other vote was cast by Zhao Zhao. In the eyes of Tenya Iida, Yun Fang has the courage of a strong man, and as the class leader, he leads all the students. That's why I voted for Yun Fang. And in the eyes of Bang Xiao, he regarded Yun Fang as a respectable opponent, so he also voted for Yun Fang. You should say something, or I will call Midoriya-kun, and the 3 of us will discuss it together. Seeing that Yun Fang did not speak, 8,000,001 asked. You can discuss this matter with Midoriya Izuku, I'm not interested. Yun Fang muttered. Not interested. 8,000,000 was slightly surprised, and just wanted to continue speaking, but was directly startled back by Yun Fang's words. Go, it's boring anyway, I'm lying down for a while, don't come to me if you have nothing, don't come to me if you have something. After Yun Fang finished speaking, he lay on the table again and fell asleep. 8,000,001 looked helpless, but there was no way, she had to consult with Midori Valley. The final decision was made that 8,000,001 became the squad leader, and Midoriya Izuku became the deputy squad leader. Afternoon. As always, Aizawa came to the classroom. Today's Hero Foundation needs to be carried out by me, as well as Olmit plus another teacher, a total of 3 people to supervise. Everyone snorted slightly, and said in unison, became 3 people. Is it a special case? Quote. One of the students raised his hand and asked, what kind of content is the question? Quote. Aizawa took out a sign and replied, rescue training in the event of various accidents such as natural disasters and floods. Quote. The costume this time can be chosen at your own discretion, the training ground is a little far from here, and you will take the bus to go over in a while. Now, start preparing. Quote. Aizawa said nothing and walked out. Everyone also prepared. A moment later, they came downstairs and got on the bus together. The training ground is not very far from Xiangyang, and it will arrive in 10 or 20 minutes. Just after getting off the bus, a man in an outer space suit has been waiting for them for a long time. And she is Space Hero 13, a gentleman hero who performed extremely well at the disaster rescue site. After scanning the people around him, number 13 said, students, I've been waiting for you for a long time, let's hurry in. Quote. Immediately after, under the leadership of number 13, Yun Fang and they entered the training ground. This training area is not very large, but it simulates various disaster scenes, which is a perfect training ground. Flood accidents, soil and sand disasters, fire accidents, storms, as such, all accidents and disasters are envisaged here. Quote. I created all the practice grounds. It's called Simulated Disaster Accident Field. USJ for short, number 13 said calmly. After the introduction of No. 13, Aizawa slowly asked forward, number 13, where is Olmit? Didn't you say that it was good to meet here? Quote. Number 13 approached Aizawa's side and said softly, Senior, Olmit used his ability to the limit of his activity on the way to work, and is now resting in the lounge. Quote. Aizawa was a little helpless, and said, this approach is too unreasonable. Quote. Immediately afterward, his heart began to worry, because recently, they had discovered an unknown force that was about to move. Olmit came to supervise, purely just in case. Phew. Aizawa sighed and muttered, I hope there are no accidents. Saying that, he raised his voice and said, no way, then let's start. Quote. After Aizawa finished speaking, he walked to the wall and leaned in. The 13th added, before we start, I want to remind you of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Quote. She said as she counted with her fingers. When everyone saw this scene, they were speechless. As you know, my personality is a black hole, and anything can be sucked in and crushed. Number 13 said. It is because of this personality that we can rescue any disaster. Midoriya Izuku asked. Number 13 nodded. Yes, but this power can also easily kill people. Quote. I think some of the students have the same personality, and our superhuman society is established through strict control of the use of personality and the qualification system. But if you take a wrong step, you can easily kill people, and we all have such extreme personalities, please keep this in mind. I think that through Mr. Aizawa's physical fitness test, everyone already knows the possibilities of their own strength. Through Olmit's combat training against people, I also truly experienced how dangerous my own strength is when dealing with others. In this lesson, I want you to change your mood. Quote. Learn how to use your personality to save others. Your power does not exist to harm others, but to save others. I hope you understand this in this lesson. Number 13 said slowly. Awesome. That's a good point. I have to say that the teacher is different. The ability to brainwash people is powerful, and by her words, basically all the students have been brainwashed. Yun Fang chuckled. In fact, he didn't know what number 13 said just now, whether it was once or after crossing. He has a function in his own right, and he is basically, left ear in, right ear out, that is not interested in himself. Abbreviated, auto-blocking function. Okay, since the 13th is over, let's get started. First of all, Aizawa's words were not finished, and the next moment, the sound of ZZ came directly from the surroundings. Some lights short-circuited, and things began to get a little weird around them. At this moment, above that fountain, a whirlpool appeared, and the whirlpool was purple beyond the edge, and all the rest was black. Aizawa was too stunned and turned around quickly. As the vortex grew larger and larger, the next moment, a hand stretched out, followed by a man whose face was grabbed by half a hand. Along with that, all kinds of weird people also came out of that whirlpool. All gather words together. Don't move, number 13, you protect the students. Aizawa said solemnly, and then stepped forward. And Yun Fang also saw the situation not far in front of them. What's that? One of them spoke. Is it like during the entrance exam, without being reminded to start the routine directly? Those are enemies. Aizawa put on the yellow thing around his neck that was about the same as his eyes. As soon as Aizawa's voice fell, basically everyone was frightened. Only Yun Fang, the corners of his mouth slowly rose, leaking a hint of excitement. As a black smoke gradually took shape, a voice followed. According to the teacher's schedule obtained a few days ago, Olmit should be here today. Black Mist said calmly. Black Mist, a member of the enemy alliance, personality, portal, the black smoke covering the whole body contains the gate that crosses the dimension. It can not only allow a large number of organization members to invade the school through their own bodies, but also instantly teleport students to various preset locations for ambushes. Smoke is immune to almost all attacks, but the part of the body that is not covered by smoke is its weak point. Where the hell is it? It's hard that I brought so many guys on a special trip. Olmit, the symbol of peace is not present. Is it just a matter of killing that group of students and he will appear? The dead-handled wooden crane spread out his hands and said in a deep voice. Dead wooden hanging, his body held by 14 hands, looking a sick man. Currently as the head of the enemy alliance, he leads his subordinates to launch a raid on Xiangyang High School, and his personality is very distorted. And his personality is personality. The object touched by 5 fingers will gradually collapse, and the scope of the destruction is so large that it can shatter the strong wall of Xiangyang High School. Except for the black fog, the dead-handled wooden hanging, and Brain Wu still standing in place, the other people rushed towards the cloud wind like a tide. Enemies. They're stupid. It's stupid to sneak into the Hero Academy. One of the students muttered. 8,000,000 stepped forward and asked no. 13. Teacher, what about the sensor that informs the intruder? Quote. Of course there is. The 13th replied. I don't know if they just showed up here or the whole school, anyway, since the sensor didn't respond at all. Then some of them should have this personality. Choosing this isolated space away from the school building, and knowing when the class came here for class, although it was but they were not stupid. Boom Zhao reasoned. Aizawa's face began to become solemn, but as a teacher, he could not show it to his students. Although it is dangerous, let your students think that as long as the teacher is there, they will not be in danger. On the 13th, start evacuating, try to contact the school. Those enemies have taken into account the countermeasures to paralyze the sensor. It is possible that the guys from the radio department are interfering. Shengming, you also try to use your personality to connect. Aizawa said in a deep voice. Shengming electric flustered for a moment, and then hurriedly tried. What about the teacher? Are you going to fight alone? That amount, even if you eliminate more personalities, it is useless. Eraserhead's way of fighting is to eliminate the enemy's personality and capture it, and fight in the frontal battle. After speaking, Midoriya Izuku's voice decreased a lot. If you only have one skill, you can't be a hero, Aizawa replied calmly. Immediately after, he walked to No 13's side and whispered a word of look. Number 13 nodded understandingly, while glancing at the classmates behind him. Okay, over to you, Number 13. After Aizawa dropped a sentence, he immediately jumped and confronted each other. After Aizawa went to battle, the 13th said to Yun Fang, everyone take refuge quickly. Quote. Immediately after, all the people ran towards the back. Yun Fang's face was slightly unwilling, and did not catch up, but ran towards the side. At this moment, a voice sounded in his ears, hey, where are you going? Quote. Yun Fang turned around and found that it was Bang Jiao who was talking to him. Didn't you hear Midoriya Izuhisa's analysis just now? The teacher's personality is to eliminate the personality of others, and such a personality belongs to the short-term battle shape. Quote. However, with such a large number of enemies, the teacher alone is fierce. So I'm going to help, certainly not to him to his side to help. Quote. Look, Yun Fang pointed to the other side, simulating the disaster relief site, where there were still many enemies standing. Don't look at the serious book that Yun Fang said, in fact, he simply wants to engage in life. He admired himself a little, his eloquence was so good, and he insisted on saying things that did not exist as if they were true. I'll go too, Boom Frost replied. Okay, you go over there, I'll go over there, okay. Yun Fang said. Boom nodded, and immediately after that, they began to move separately. But at this moment, Bakugao Shungji originally wanted to look back at the battle situation, but unexpectedly, he saw that the Cloud Wind and the Scorched Frost were walking towards the battlefield on the other side. In an instant, Bakugao Shungji stopped his steps. These two fools, do you want to fight secretly? How could I possibly take refuge by myself? Quote. With that, he turned around and ran towards the other side of the site that simulated the disaster. However, his action was seen by other students. Teacher, it's not good, boom, boom, and Cloud Wind went in the direction of the battlefield. Number 13 froze, quickly turned around, and immediately raised his eyebrows. What do you say? The one called Yun Fang also left. Number 13 quickly asked. How can they mess around? Quote. Before, Aizawa said to No. 13, there is a student named Yun Fang. His strength is the strongest among the students, and he can assist you when you encounter unexpected times. Quote. Now it's good, since this kid ran to the battlefield. These guys really pick the time. Students, no matter how much you are, you should follow me to take refuge first. Number 13 shouted. All three, I'm speechless, 8,000,000 complained. Teacher, don't worry, these three are the strongest among us, they will be fine. Iida Tenya spoke. The 13th was stunned. If Tenya Iida didn't say that he wasn't so worried, he was even more worried when he said so, and the three strongest ones ran away. Compared to worrying about Yun Fang and them, Number 13 was more worried about the group of students in front of her. It is impossible for him to protect this group of people intact by himself, and Aizawa said that he would let the stronger one be his assistant. The strongest one ran away, and as a result, the second and third ones also ran. This is not to close the 13th to a dead end. Simulate a hilly disaster site. Yun Fang rushed to the top of the hill, and at this time, the people of the enemy alliance had been waiting here for a long time. This imp came alone to die. A member of the enemy alliance with an ape's arm in his hand spoke. Just one. It's not enough for everyone to play. The other spoke. This one won't bother everyone, just leave it to me. A burly man said, and then rushed towards the cloud wind. You guy wants to eat alone, it's impossible. As the voice of the one behind fell, the others also rushed towards Yun Fang. The corners of Yun Fang's mouth rose slightly, and he said in a deep voice, eat alone. That's what I said. Quote. The next moment, Yun Fang directly used Mu Duan's ability, and underground, countless small branches twisted flexibly like vines and wrapped around their feet. What is this thing? Yay, like a snake, it's disgusting. Brush, brush, brush. Some of the entangled people tried to tear off these small branches with their hands. However, no matter how hard they push, these small branches, like a part of their body, just can't be torn off. The next moment, Yun Fang leaked a smile again, and immediately after, those small branches suddenly became larger, and dozens of branches merged together. It immediately spread towards the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge tree. And they are trapped in the count, only one head leaks out. They instantly began to wonder and shout. What the hell is going on here? I'm trapped inside, come and save me. What the hell is this guy's personality? The small branch only wrapped around a part of the people in front, and the part of the people behind were slightly afraid when they saw this scene. Yun Fang jumped onto the tree, and immediately attacked the people behind. Yun Fang's arms directly turned into a piece of wood and began to spread towards them, but at the same time as spreading, his arms split and became two in one hand. Immediately after that, when approaching them, it had changed into hundreds of forks in one hand. The people of the enemy alliance dodged one after another, and originally they could dodge a few times, but as Yun Fang's arms forked more and more. He dodged the attack in front of him, but the one behind him directly entangled them again. The next moment, on the top of the branches, dense leaves bloomed and spread to the ground. Yun Fang withdrew his arm, and the next moment he returned to the appearance of a normal arm. In the blink of an eye, they could say that they were subdued by Yun Fang in an instant. You're here to bring me something. Yun Fang sneered. Is this kid really a student? Since the strength is so strong. Quote. What the hell is this personality, not only disgusting, but also so powerful. Okay, let's all be quiet for a while, and kill you guys while there is no one now. Yun Fang leaked a bloodthirsty expression. After everyone heard this, their faces were hideous, and they all began to be afraid, and at this moment, they all felt that they had switched roles with Yun Fang. They all came to kill Olmet, the symbol of peace, but they did not expect that the result was that they were about to be killed by the students. As the fear began to evaporate in their hearts, Yun Fang also activated the ability of the soul fruit at this moment. Immediately after, the fear in their hearts was infinitely magnified, and finally, they were completely pulled into the abyss by fear. Golem, golem. White objects continued to float up from their bodies, and Yun Fang stretched out his hands and pulled towards them. The moment the white object was torn out of their bodies, they suddenly felt black in front of them and fainted. With 3 or 2 efforts, Yun Fang absorbed all the lifespan taken, and their lives, Yun Fang did not drain, but only extracted 99.9%. Even so, they can still live for about 10 days, and the reason why they haven't absorbed it is that Yun Fang has another plan. 535 years of life. A smile leaked from the corner of Yun Fang's mouth. At this time, you can basically use these lifetimes to create ordinary homies 535, and they still have a lifespan of 1 year. If the lifespan is smaller, it can even make more. At this moment, not far from the cloud wind, a purple vortex appeared out of thin air with an edge. Yun Fang noticed the whirlpool, and then a smile bloomed on his face. The next moment, 8,000,000 and ear-ringing incense fell from it. Immediately after, as they shouted a few times, they pressed together, and Yun Fang saw that it was the 2 of them, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. In the next second, they also noticed the cloud wind. Cloud wind, how is it here? Quote. Yun Fang was slightly curious and asked, why did you come here, didn't you go to take refuge? Quote. 8,000,000 and ear-ringing incense slowly got up from the ground and straightened their clothes. Yes, we just wanted to take refuge, but there was a little glitch on the way and we were teleported here by someone from an enemy alliance. 8,000,000 told Yun Fang what he had experienced. So, you mean everyone else was teleported somewhere else? Yun Fang asked. 8,000,000 and Erlang Shangshang nodded. However, you were late, and the people here have already been killed by me. Yun Fang said calmly. Kill it. 8,000,000 heels Shangshang cast their eyes behind the cloud wind. When they saw the huge tree, there were human faces. A coolness spread from head to foot. Are they all dead? Hibika asked. Yun Fang shook his head and said, no, I just blocked their movements, and now they just faint. Quote. Are we going to join them now? 8,000,000 asked. Yun Fang nodded. But just as they were about to leave the simulated hill disaster site, on the other side, the black vortex reappeared. Immediately after, the dead-handled wooden hanging, and the brainless without a brain shell and a big mouth came out. Not own it, but kill it by the way. The dead-handled wooden hanger said in a deep voice. 8,000,000 and Erlang Shangshang took a few steps back in fear, and his face began to condense sweat. Immediately after, on the arm of 8,000,000, colored particles of light appeared, and the next moment, she directly created a steel bar. Then he created a machete to give the ear-ringing incense. Yun Fang, what kind of weapon do you need? 8,000,000 asked. No need, I'm not good at dancing knives and guns. Yun Fang said in a deep voice. The dead-handled wooden crane looked at the face that was blocked in the tree, and then calmly said, all the members have been suppressed, and there is not a single wounded, the nearest child is really powerful. I'm ashamed of you, alliance of enemies. Quote. Brain Wu, kill them, I can't wait to see them lying on the ground. Dead-handled wooden hanger said in a deep voice. Brain Wu's eyes rolled a few times, and then rushed towards Yun Fang. Yun Fang's arm instantly turned into a wooden state, began to extend indefinitely, and began to punch towards the pounced Brain Wu. The speed is very fast, and the naked eye can see the state of hundreds of arms impacting. Bang, 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 quote. Yun Fang's fist constantly hit Brain Wu's head and abdomen, but it still couldn't stop Brain Wu's advance. Flash away, Yun Fang said to the people behind, and then he also dodged to the right. Boom, without a punch, the brain slammed the ground, and rock debris flew everywhere. It seems that the impact is ineffective against him. Yun Fang said in a deep voice. The dead-handled wooden hang sneered, and then continued. It is ineffective because he has the ability to impact absorption, and if he wants to cause no damage to the brain, he has to cut out the meat little by little. Quote. Of course, whether it will give you a chance or not, that's another matter. In that case, you can only trap him. Yun Fang muttered. Then his hands danced upwards, and suddenly the ground cracked, and hundreds of branches popped out. But at the moment when the branch popped out, Brain Wu had already noticed it, and he quickly dodged it. But the branches still spread towards him. The next moment, the brain used all its strength, and directly punched towards the oncoming branches. He shot out an invisible force. Not only the branches were broken into debris, but even the ground was beaten into a huge pit. Yun Fang was slightly surprised. It seems that the enemy this time has some skills. These moves have little effect on him, and when he makes moves, it takes a little time, which also creates the opportunity to be dodged by him. Quote. Yun Fang, or let's escape, we are not opponents at all. 8,000,000 shouted. Yun Fang smiled coldly and said, you can't escape, you forget that he has a guy who can teleport by his side. Quote. There is only one last resort, which is to use the tree realm birth to make this my home field, but this time, my physical strength is not much, and I can't last long. Yun Fang muttered. The physical strength he said was roughly the blue bar in the game, and with Yun Fang's current physical strength, he could only release a tree realm birth. After the release, it was quite used, 95% of the physical energy. But that's the only way now. Yun Fang said coldly. We're here to help you too. 8,000,000 and ear-ringing incense approached the cloud wind. Stand firm, Yun Fang instructed. Hearing Yun Fang's words, the 8,000,000 of them looked at him and asked. What? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.